Chapter 3262. Therefore, after a perfunctory and enthusiastic response, he said that he would go back and consult the board of directors of the Buffon Hotel Group to see what the maximum purchase quota could be before giving Lute the news. Lute didn't think much. He enthusiastically sent Lin E to the door and asked his secretary, Secretary Liu, to send Lin E out of the group. Of course, this was also convenient for Lin E. He could secretly take a few photos of Secretary Liu from multiple angles. Lin E planned to disguise himself after going back. After bidding farewell to Secretary Liu, Lin E quickly left the Conch Group without stopping. What Buffon Family Hotel Group's purchasing manager? These were all fabricated. Although Lin Yi's master knew old Buffon, the head of the Buffon family, Lin E didn't want to trouble old Buffon at all. He didn't want to implicate him. After all, Red Conch was not a good person. Although the Buffon family was huge, it was not wise to make an enemy for no reason. Therefore, it was very likely that the other party would quickly investigate that there was no Yi Ling in the Buffon Hotel Group. Of course, Lin Yi didn't care about this. The identity of Yi Ling was also the last time he appeared in the Conch Group. Tomorrow, Lin Yi would come again, but he would definitely not use the identity of Yi Ling. Lin Yi stopped a taxi on the side of the road and went to the town's largest cosmetics market. Lin Yi came here to purchase some necessary cosmetic supplies. Tomorrow, Lin Yi's identity would be Secretary Liu. Although Lin Yi hadn't been in contact with these things for a long time, this was Lin Yi's old profession after all. He was familiar with the purchase. When these things were purchased, Lin Yi returned directly to the bath center where he stayed. Of course, before returning, Lin Yi checked for a long time. After confirming that no one followed him, he entered the bath center. Lin Yi's guess was right. Secretary Fanny quickly got in touch with the Buffon family. Although the Buffon family had a large business, it was still very easy to confirm whether there was a hotel purchasing manager called Yi Ling. After all, a purchasing manager was considered a middle-level leader. The reply that Secretary Fanny got was that there was no one named Yi Ling in the hotel group. Even in the entire leadership team of the Buffon Group, there was no such person. As expected, there was a problem. When Fanny reported this result to the general manager wasn't too surprised. He just frowned slightly and thought for a moment before saying to Fanny, "Fanny, go and contact the Overseas Cultivators Association. Tomorrow's transaction will be conducted in my general manager's office. Apart from President He Luodong, no one else is allowed to participate." Will they agree? Fanny faltered slightly upon hearing this. "If you agree, then we'll trade. If you don't, then forget it." The general manager said, "What happened today is a bit strange. I don't need to cause trouble for a business deal." "Yes, boss." Fanny nodded and went to carry out the order. Perhaps the Overseas Cultivators Association was really short on cash. In order to complete this drug deal, they actually agreed to the general manager's request. After all, although the Overseas Cultivators Association was a large business, most of it was a stable real estate business. The annual income was basically fixed. If they wanted to take out some extra cash, they would have to do other business. The general manager calmed down a bit after hearing the reply from the Overseas Cultivators Association. After Lin Yi went upstairs, he didn't go straight to his room. Instead, he went to Cheng Yi and Su Shirhan's room and knocked on the door. Footsteps came from inside the room, but no one spoke immediately. Lin Yi could feel that there was someone standing behind the door mirror. After a while, the door was opened, revealing Cheng Yi's surprised face. "Lin Yi, is it done?" Cheng Yi moved aside and let Lin Yi in. "You're quite vigilant." Lin Yi was very satisfied with Cheng Yi's actions. "Yeah, once something goes wrong, I'll run with Xiao Han." Cheng Yi said. "And where's Xiao Han?" Lin Yi asked. "She's asleep. She actually waited for you the whole night. She couldn't take it anymore, so she went asleep." Cheng Yi said. "You also waited for the whole night?" Lin Yi looked at Cheng Yi and asked. I'm a cultivator. It's fine." Cheng Yi was a bit embarrassed. "Thank you." Lin Yi knew that Su Shirhan didn't sleep last night, so Cheng Yi must have stayed with her. Now that Su Shirhan was resting, Cheng Yi still had to be vigilant, afraid that someone would come looking for trouble. "It's fine." Cheng-Yi shook her head. I've hurt Xiao Han too much in the past. Now, I can only try my best to make up for it. Cheng-Yi's face suddenly changed. What's wrong? Lin Yi quickly asked. Before, Feng Tianhu called me, but I pretended not to hear it. I didn't answer or reply. I was afraid that he would ask me about what happened here. I don't know how to answer. Cheng-Yi was naturally referring to the fact that Lin Yi wasn't that powerful. Not to mention killing a peak late phase heaven class master. Lin Yi wasn't even a match for a normal peak late phase heaven class master. Lin Yi was slightly stunned and frowned. The news of him being chased by He Tianzu would probably spread back very quickly. Lin Yi didn't believe that the association had no relationship with the other ancient sections. From the fact that they knew about the automatic cauldron, they were more or less connected to the other ancient sections. So, once the news of him being chased by them spread, then the godly ability that he had been bragging about before would be destroyed by itself. He would fall down from his pedestal. However, this was something that Lin Yi couldn't stop. Lin Yi couldn't control the mouth of others. He believed that once this news was spread, his enemies would become restless again. Wouldn't they? When he returned, what awaited him? Sigh, Lin Yi had a headache just thinking about it. Just tell him the truth. Lin Yi thought for a moment and said, since he couldn't hide it anymore, he might as well let Cheng-Yi tell him the truth. Otherwise, it would be the same as harming Cheng-Yi. Cheng-Yi was stunned. She didn't think that Lin Yi would let her tell him the truth. Chapter 3263. That's true. Cheng-Yi sighed. What Lin Yi said was the truth. Even if she hid it, she couldn't hide it. Then I'll call him back now. Okay. Lin Yi nodded and said, after that, you should rest. I'll go prepare. I still have things to do tomorrow. Okay. Cheng-Yi replied. After Lin Yi returned to his room, Cheng-Yi called Feng Tianhu. Yi, why didn't you pick up my call? Feng Tianhu asked. I was with Lin Yi and the others. It wasn't convenient for me to pick up, Cheng-Yi said matter-of-factly. This was the most effective excuse. Oh. Feng Tianhu didn't suspect anything and continued. How's it going over there? Did you sign a contract with that entertainment company? No. Something big happened here. Cheng-Yi lowered her voice. Oh, what big thing? Feng Tianhu was stunned. It's like this. As she spoke, Cheng-Yi told Feng Tianhu about how He Tianzu from the Overseas Cultivators Association came to harass Su Shirhan. Then, Lin Yi provoked He Tianzu. Then, there was a conflict on the road, and Lin Yi ran away in fear. Feng Tianhu was shocked after listening to it. Yes, listening to Cheng-Yi's story, it sounded like a fantasy story. Are you serious? Lin couldn't even defeat a peak late stage heaven class master? How is that possible? It wasn't strange that Feng Tianhu didn't believe it. After all, the rumors about Lin Yi were too miraculous. This difference was beyond Feng Tianhu's imagination. It's true, Cheng-Yi said with certainty. Why would I lie to you about such a big thing? Feng Tianhu thought about it and agreed. Cheng-Yi wouldn't benefit from lying about this. Moreover, whether this news was true or not, the ancient age would soon send news about it. They would know once they heard it. Thus, he didn't question it anymore and said, okay, I got it. You continue to lurk around Lin Yi and think of a way to ask Lin Yi why he couldn't even beat a peak late-stage heaven rank expert. Also, what's with the rumors of instant kills? Okay, I understand. Cheng-Yi nodded and said, I will try my best to get information from Lin Yi. Okay, then I'll hang up first. Feng Tianhu hadn't recovered from the shock yet. He needed to digest the news and find out more. He didn't think that Cheng-Yi would lie to him. After all, Cheng-Yi had no reason to lie to him. However, this matter was too important. Feng Tianhu didn't believe it directly. He wanted to wait and see. After all, so many heaven stage experts had died. If it wasn't Lin Yi, then who did it? Cheng-Yi hung up the phone and was about to leave the washroom. But when she turned around, she saw Su Shirhan standing in front of the washroom with a face full of shock and anger. Cheng-Yi couldn't help but be shocked. Xiao Han, you're awake? Yi, who did you call just now? You actually betrayed Lin Yi. Su Shirhan glared at Cheng-Yi angrily. She woke up in a daze and wanted to go to the washroom. When she walked to the door, she heard Chung Yi talking to someone on the phone. At first, Su Shirhan didn't care and wanted to walk in. But when she heard Lin Yi's name, she immediately stopped. Su Shirhan jumped in fright. Chung Yi was telling the person on the other side of the phone about Lin Yi's identity. Of course, Su Shirhan was very rational and didn't stop Chung Yi on the spot because she didn't know who was on the other side of the phone. If she stopped her, would it alert the enemy? Would the person on the other side know that Chung Yi was exposed? Would the other side immediately do something to Lin Yi? So, Su Shirhan waited until Chung Yi hung up the phone before she questioned angrily. Xiaohan, listen to me. It's not what you think. Chung Yi was a little panicked. She didn't think that Su Shirhan would wake up at this moment and hear everything she said in front of the washroom. It's not. I heard it with my own ears. How could it be fake? Su Shirhan said coldly. Xiaohan, listen to my explanation. Chung Yi didn't confess to Su Shirhan. She had already made up her mind, but as time passed, Chung Yi also betrayed Feng Tianhu. She didn't want to hurt the relationship between her and Su Shirhan, so she didn't say anything. What do you explain? Su Shirhan asked. Actually, it's like this. I have to start from that time at the orphanage. Chung Yi knew that she couldn't hide it from Su Shirhan today, so she decided to tell the truth. She started from the orphanage helping Su Shirhan block an attack from the Great Elder of the Black Horse Society. When she talked about that time, when Chung Yi stood up to protect her, Su Shirhan's angry expression immediately calmed down. Yes, Chung Yi risked her life to protect her. That couldn't be faked. Su Shirhan had always been very grateful to Chung Yi. So, the Great Elder of the Black Horse Gang came to assassinate her mother at the orphanage. Chung Yi knew about it, and the previous few assassinations, Chung Yi also knew about it. It's just that Chung Yi didn't kill her. Listening to Chung Yi's story, Su Shirhan's heart also softened. Chung Yi was also a girl with a hard life, and what made Su Shirhan helpless was that Chung Yi's boss was actually her own uncle. This kind of internal strife in the family made Su Shirhan have no temper, only a deep helplessness. So, Lin Yi already knew about this, and it was Lin Yi who told you to tell Feng Tianhu? Su Shirhan asked. She didn't call Feng Tianhu third uncle because she felt that Feng Tianhu didn't deserve to be her third uncle. Yes, Lin Yi said that this matter couldn't be hidden. Sooner or later people would find out, so there's no need to hide it anymore. Chung Yi nodded and said, Then, I've wronged you. Su Shirhan sighed and said, to be honest, I really didn't want to lose our friendship. Luckily, you didn't disappoint me. Actually, I've done a lot of things to let you down, Xiaohan. I'm already very satisfied that you can forgive me. I don't dare to hope that we can be like sisters again, Chung Yi said carefully. Chapter 32-64. Lin Yi went back to rest. He still has other things to do tomorrow. Let's not disturb him, okay? Chung Yi paused and said, But, Xiaohan, if you don't believe me, you can ask Lin. There's no need for that. I believe you. Su Shirhan waved her hand and said, I'm just worried about Lin Yi. I don't know if the people from the Overseas Cultivators Association can find this place. Compared to the people from the association, I'm more worried about those ancient sections. Chung Yi smiled bitterly. The association is overseas after all. But those ancient sects, if Lin Yi goes back, will they come looking for trouble with Lin Yi? I don't know, but it's useless for us to worry. Lin Yi should have a plan, right? Su Shirhan trusted Lin Yi more. She believed that Lin Yi should have a plan. That's right. It's useless for us to worry. Chung Yi smiled bitterly and shook her head. After Lin Yi returned to his room, he put on the 1,000 silk mask. Then, he compared Secretary Liu's photo in his phone and began to put on makeup. Secretary Liu and Lin Yi looked very similar when he wore the 1,000 silk mask. As long as he put on some disguise, even Liu Te himself wouldn't be able to recognize him, especially people with Asian faces. In the eyes of the Westerners, they were all the same. After Lin Yi disguised himself, it was basically foolproof. As for Secretary Liu's clothes, Lin Yi didn't get it. This was a custom-made outfit from Conk Group. Lin Yi didn't have the ability to get it. So, Lin Yi planned to take it off Secretary Liu tomorrow. After doing all this, Lin Yi took out his phone. He hesitated for a moment and called Gu Xian. "Boss, why did you call me?" Gu Xian picked up the phone and was a little excited. Actually, the ancient era was filled with rumors of Lin Yi's awe-inspiring might. As Lin Yi's underling, Gu Xian was also very proud. If his boss was awesome, wouldn't his underling also be proud? Although others didn't know that he was Lin Yi's little brother, he was very happy. "It's like this, Gu Xian. In the past 2 days, have there been any rumors about me in the ancient era?" Lin Yi asked after some thought. "Rumors about you, boss?" Gu Xian was slightly taken aback. She pondered for a moment and said, "No. If you want to talk about rumors, it's the one about you killing the Supreme Elder of the Black Horse Association. Apart from that, there's nothing else." "Oh, is that so? Then help me keep an eye out. If there are any other rumors, inform me immediately," Lin Yi instructed. Now it seemed that the matter between him and the Overseas Cultivators Association had not spread back to the ancient era. Once it spread, he would be in trouble when he returned. He believed that even if the Heavenly Elixir sect did not deal with him, the Everyday sect and the Dongfang family would definitely deal with him. After all, these two sects had the greatest enmity with him and were almost irreconcilable. "Okay, I got it," Gu Xian replied. In fact, at the same time, Kong Ming had already found some information about Lin Yi with the help of Little E. It was really not easy to hide things in the ancient era from the Five Elements sect. From all kinds of clues, Patriarch Xianxun had roughly deduced a conclusion. After listening to Little E and Kong Ming's reports, Patriarch Xianxun frowned. The conclusion he deduced was a little shocking, but it was reasonable. So, whether it was the Dongfang family, the Everyday sect, or the Black Horse Society, when the incident happened, the people from the Blood-clad Underworld sect were nearby, right? Yes, according to the whereabouts of the Blood-clad Underworld sect's patriarchs, we can draw this conclusion. Little E nodded. After all, if the Blood-clad Underworld sect's patriarchs went somewhere at the same time, as long as the place was not too secret, they could investigate it. In that case, it should be Lin Yi who hired the Blood-clad Underworld sect to kill the people from the Dongfang family, the Everyday sect, and the Black Horse Society. Speaking up to this point, Patriarch Xianxun had some doubts. This deduction was reasonable. The Blood-clad Underworld sect's patriarchs were at the place where the rumor happened, and the Blood-clad Underworld sect profession was to kill people for others. As long as Lin Yi paid enough, it was not impossible for the Blood-clad Underworld sect's patriarchs to take action. However, the only thing that puzzled Patriarch Xianxun was that although the blood-clothed Underworld sect was an anomaly among the ancient sects, it was still a member of the ancient sections. It wasn't wrong for them to take someone's money to eliminate a calamity. However, wouldn't killing so many top experts of the ancient sects incite public anger? In the past, although the blood-clad Underworld sect had accepted business, they would not accept such tasks when it involved the leaders of the sect. After all, if one killed an ordinary disciple, the sect could let it go. Every injustice had its perpetrator, and every debt had its debtor. They would only settle accounts with the person who hired them. However, if one killed an elder of the sect, wouldn't that be a blood feud? Patriarch Xianxun did not believe that the blood-clad Underworld sect would be so foolish. Wasn't this too arrogant? Did they want to become the public enemy of the ancient sects? Even if the blood-clad Underworld sect had the backing of the Five Elements sect, they wouldn't dare to do this, right? Even Patriarch Xianxun himself did not dare to easily kill the pure, heavenly master of the Everyday sect. This was simply forming a blood feud. However, Patriarch Xianxun felt that even if one of the blood-clad Underworld sect's patriarchs went crazy, it was impossible for all three of them to go crazy together, right? Did these three want to become enemies with the entire ancient sects? Or was there someone even more powerful backing them up from behind? Patriarch Xianxun was really puzzled. There is this possibility. Otherwise, Lin Yi had a grudge with the blood-clad Underworld sect in the past. Kong Ming nodded and said, "Before this, Zhao Qibing hired the blood-clad Underworld sect to kill Lin Yi." Patriarch Xianxun nodded. He did not believe that Lin Yi and the blood-clad underworld sect were in cahoots. There was obviously a huge conflict between the two, but what benefits did Lin Yi offer to make the blood-clad underworld sect take action? Chapter 3265. After pondering for a while, Patriarch Xianshun raised his head and asked, "Has the pure young heavenly lord of the everyday and everyday sect succeeded in breaking through to the great perfection realm? I'm not sure either. I heard that after Heavenly Venerate Pure Een died, Heavenly Venerate Pure Yang has been working hard to break through to the perfected stage, but there's no news." Little One shook his head, indicating that he wasn't too sure. "Go and investigate before deciding if this news should be released," said Patriarch Blackearth. "Yes, I'll go and find out," Little One quickly replied. Ancestor Xianxia nodded. Now, the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect had 2 experts at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Realm. This was an advantage that other ancient sects couldn't compare to. The reason why the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect could become an anomaly was also because of their powerful strength. Although the 5 Elements sect could suppress him, Ancestor Xianxin and Ancestor Xianjun were both peak, late heaven stage, great perfection experts, and Ancestor Xianxin was even more powerful than ordinary peak, late heaven stage, great perfection experts. But the 5 Elements sect really couldn't do anything about this. With Boss Bai around, Patriarch Xianxin had to consider Boss Bai when he did things. Since they had agreed, Patriarch Xianxin would not interfere with anything related to Lin Yi openly. If he wanted to do something, he could only do it secretly. Therefore, the blood-clothed underworld sect could only be dealt with by the everyday and everyday sect, the Dongfang clan, and Dark Horse Society. However, they needed the strength to make a move. In the everyday and everyday sect, there was only one confirmed peak, late heaven stage, great perfection expert, and that was Ancestor Wild Bull. As for Pure Yang Empyrean, he was currently trying to break through peak, late heaven stage, great perfection. Whether or not he succeeded was still unknown. The Dongfang family, at present, has no great master, and the most potential to hit the great perfection, Dongfang Yinxing, has died, and Dongfang Badeo's age is too old, has passed the peak of life. It wasn't an easy task to ascend to the great circle of perfection. Finally, there was the Black Horse Gang. The Black Horse Gang still had a supreme elder in seclusion, as well as the Black Horse Gang's leader, who had just advanced to the peak of the Heaven Realm. These two were at the peak of the Heaven Realm. However, if they wanted to kill the 3 ancestors of the blood-clad underworld sect with an absolute advantage, they would need at least 3 great perfection realm experts to work together. Even 3 might not be enough to kill them, but 4 would be the safest. Therefore, whether Heavenly Venerable Pure Yang could successfully ascend to the great perfection stage depended on this. It was of the utmost importance. Patriarch Blackearth was used to planning before taking action. If he did not have absolute confidence that he could defeat the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect, he would rather not release the news for the time being. After all, as long as the Netherworld sect didn't fall, it would be difficult to touch Lin Yi. After putting on makeup, Lin Yi looked at himself in the mirror. He looked exactly like Secretary Liu in the phone. After doing all this, Lin Yi walked out of the bath center. Of course, the bathing center was crowded. No one would notice whether Lin Yi was a customer of the bathhouse or not. On the side of the road, Lin Yi hailed a taxi and headed straight for the Red Conch Group. Soon, he arrived at the Conch Group. After Lin Yi paid the fare, he swaggered into the Conch Group. His current appearance was that of Secretary Liu. He believed that all the employees in the Conch Group recognized him. True enough, as soon as Lin Yi entered the company, someone greeted Lin Yi. "Secretary Liu, why are you out? Weren't you in Mr. Lute's office just now?" A staff member of the Conch Group's business department greeted Secretary Liu. Lin Yi smiled. He imitated Secretary Liu's voice and said, "I went out to do something." "Oh." The staff member just asked casually and did not suspect anything at all. He turned around and went to do his own thing. Lin Yi took the elevator and went to the floor where Lute's office was located. What Lenny had to do now was to find Secretary Liu as soon as possible. He wanted to knock Secretary Liu out, and then where Secretary Liu's clothes to find the general manager of the conch group. After coming out of the elevator, he did not wander around. Instead, he went straight to the men's room. This floor was not like the one below. If Secretary Liu and appeared at the same time, it was hard to guarantee that they would not be discovered. Therefore, planned to wait in the bathroom. He didn't believe that Secretary Liu would always not come to the bathroom. As long as Secretary Liu came to the bathroom, then Lin Yi's opportunity would come. In the bathroom, Lin Yi began to wait for a long time. Fortunately, there were many cubicles in the toilet here. One of them was locked for a long time, so no one would be suspicious. Patience was easy for Lin Yi. He waited for more than 3 hours, and Secretary Liu still did not appear. However, Lin Yi was not in a hurry. Finally, after about 3.5 hours, Secretary Liu walked into the bathroom. Secretary Liu was peeing in the urinal. Lin Yi was not in a hurry. When Secretary Liu finished peeing and was about to put on his belt, Lin Yi quietly appeared behind Secretary Liu. Secretary Liu directly took the Fushi 9 needles from the jade pendant space into his hand. He pricked Secretary Liu's body a few times, and Secretary Liu directly fainted on the ground. After being pricked by Lin Yi, Secretary Liu wouldn't wake up for a while. Moreover, the most important thing was that after he woke up, he would have temporary amnesia. He wouldn't remember what happened before. He would have a blank memory. This was also the effect that Lin Yi wanted to confuse the people of the Red Conch. After dragging Secretary Liu into the toilet cubicle, Lin Yi quickly took off his clothes, pants, and watch, and put them on himself. Then he locked the door of the cubicle and jumped out from the top of the cubicle. At this moment, Lin Yi had become Secretary Liu. Lin Yi came out of the bathroom. He didn't stay for long. He took the elevator directly and went to the floor where the general manager's office was. With Secretary Liu's elevator card in his pocket, Lin Yi easily passed the verification. The elevator rose slowly. After stopping on the 29th floor, the elevator door opened. Lin Yi walked out of the elevator. At this moment, there was another person in the corridor. This person was actually the general manager's secretary, Fanny. Isn't this Mr. Liu? Why are you here? Are you looking for the boss? Fanny looked strangely at Lin Yi, who came out of the elevator. That's right, Miss Fanny. Where are you going? Lin Yi already knew Fanny's name from her chess card. When he probed with his perception yesterday, he seemed to have heard this name, but he didn't know the specific spelling. Chapter 3266. Oh, I see. Lin Yi nodded and said, Great, then I'll go with you to get the water. Lin Yi didn't expect the CEO's office to have no hot water in the huge conch group. He had to go to the hot water supply on every floor to get hot water. However, Lin Yi wasn't very clear about the internal management of the conch group. Anyway, it was easier for Lin Yi to get close to the CEO's office. Okay, Fanny agreed readily. I can't carry it all by myself. You can help me carry it in. I'm not an outsider anyway. Of course, no problem. Lin Yi nodded. Not an outsider? Lin Yi really didn't know why he wasn't an outsider. However, Lin Yi knew that Secretary Liu was arranged by the CEO to train beside Liu Te. Perhaps this Secretary Liu was a relative of the CEO's family? Lin Yi didn't guess wrong. Secretary Liu was the younger brother of one of the CEO's concubines. That was why he took care of him. Of course, this wasn't something that Lin Yi knew. Together with Fanny, they went to the hot water supply. Lin Yi carried the brewed coffee and walked to the CEO's office with Fanny. Fanny knew Secretary Liu's identity. She was also the CEO's mistress. This kind of nepotism was common in the conch group. She didn't treat Secretary Liu as an outsider at all. After knocking on the door, Fanny pushed it open and entered. Lin Yi also walked in with the coffee. The CEO was slightly taken aback when he saw someone following behind Fanny. However, when he saw that it was Secretary Liu, he didn't say anything. After all, he was one of them and knew the secrets of the group. Lin Yi placed the coffee in front of the CEO and the president of the Overseas Cultivators Association, Luonan. Yes, Lin Yi was very shocked at this moment. He didn't expect He Luonan to appear here. Could it be that He Luonan knew that he was already in Ruilita town and wanted to find him through the Red Conch? Thinking of this possibility, Lin Yi's heart was slightly shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. After all, his current identity was Secretary Liu, and it had nothing to do with Lin Yi. President He, the goods are ready. I wonder if you've prepared the money? The general manager didn't seem to avoid Lin Yi in the slightest and spoke directly. Of course. Hilwan pointed at a suitcase at his feet and nodded. Lin Yi listened to the conversation between these two people, and his heart suddenly relaxed. It turned out that these two people were here to trade drugs. It had nothing to do with me. However, why did President He want to trade drugs? Why did the Overseas Cultivators Association suddenly become involved in such a business? Of course, what Lenny did not know was that President He wanted to purchase a batch of first-grade automatic medicinal cauldrons. But when he inquired about the price with Patriarch Black Earth, he was given a fright. Why is this thing so expensive? The internal price wasn't cheap either. President He wanted to purchase dozens of medicinal cauldrons, which was more than 10 billion yuan. Where did President He find such a large budget? Without money, he could only think of other ways to earn money. The previous businesses of the Overseas Cultivators Association all had fixed income. It was impossible to say that one of the businesses could earn more money if he wanted to. That was impossible. Therefore, President He and a few of the higher-ups of the Overseas Cultivators Association discussed and decided to sell drugs. This was the fastest way to earn money. Moreover, they had their own hotels and bars. They didn't do this business in the past because the Overseas Cultivators Association didn't want to get involved in the underworld. With a stable income, there was no need to worry about these things. However, it was different now. If they didn't earn money, they wouldn't have the money to buy automatic medicinal cauldrons. Therefore, President He personally visited the Conch Group to conduct the drug trade. Of course, President He was an expert at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage. That was why he dared to go alone. If it was someone else, they really wouldn't dare to come here. However, it was also because the Overseas Cultivators Association was powerful, and this was the first time they were doing business with the Conch Group, that the general manager was so careful. He was afraid that the other party would do something bad, so he decided to conduct the transaction at the headquarters of the Conch Group. All right, since we all understand, then there's no need to say anything more. The general manager said, President He, shall we do the transaction now? Okay, sure. He Luton nodded and said, but first, you should let me see the goods, right? Of course, no problem. The general manager nodded. When buying something, one had to look at the goods. This was the rule that almost all transactions followed. It wasn't strange to have the goods first and the payment later. As he said that, the general manager waved to Fanny and said, Fanny, go and take the goods out. Yes, boss. Fanny nodded and turned to go inside the office. I'll help you. Lin Yi seized the opportunity and said quickly. This was because Lin Yi had already seen that there was no safe in the outer room of the general manager's office. Obviously, no one would put a safe for storing documents in the outer room. They would be placed in a place in the office where outsiders couldn't reach. Fanny didn't express any objections and let Lin Yi follow her into the inner room. Even the general manager didn't feel that there was anything wrong with this. Secretary Liu's sister was his concubine and had already given birth to a son. Therefore, his trust in Secretary Liu was no less than Fanny's. Moreover, Secretary Liu was a warm-hearted and diligent young man. Otherwise, even if he was his brother-in-law, the general manager might not have taken a liking to him. He entrusted him with important tasks and arranged for him to learn by Lu's side. This was also in preparation for him to take over a higher position in the future. Lin Yi and Fanny came to the inner room of the office together. At a glance, Lin Yi saw the safe near the office desk. Unfortunately, this safe was a safe with a password and fingerprint verification. Both were indispensable. Of course, Lin Yi could break it by force if he wanted to, but he definitely couldn't now. Not to mention that Fanny was here. Even if she wasn't, he didn't have the time. What should I do? How can I get the yellow document in the safe? If only I could retrieve things from the air. Just thinking about it, I could get the yellow document in the safe. How great would that be? Huh? Lin, he suddenly had an idea. My jade pendant. I wonder if it can do that. Usually, when Lin he stored things in the space of the jade pendant, he used his mind. For example, when Lin he saw an item in front of him, he only needed to think about it and store it in the space of the jade pendant. Then, the item would smoothly enter the space of the jade pendant without Lin he having to do anything. Chapter 32:67. Thinking of this, Lin he quietly walked to the side of the safe while Fanny was opening the general manager's cabinet. Then he used his mind to move the yellow folder inside the safe into the space of the jade pendant. Suddenly, 2 yellow folders appeared out of nowhere in the space of the jade pendant. This discovery surprised and delighted Lin Yi. His hypothesis was correct. As long as he could think of something that could fit in the space of the jade pendant, he could put it in the space of the jade pendant, even if it was separated by a safe. This was because Jiao Lao had said before that the space of the jade pendant seemed to be some kind of fourth-dimensional space. It was not restricted by the current third-dimensional space. The rules of the two were different, so Lin he could easily steal the folders. Of course, Big Brother Feng had said before that there was only 1 yellow folder. Lin he had obtained 2, so one of them must be something else, and not the address of the drug refining base. However, it didn't matter. He could take it back and look at it. Now, Lin didn't dare to take it out and look at it carelessly. After all, Fanny was right beside him. After doing all this, Lin he quietly went to Fanny's side. At this time, Fanny successfully took out a small black box. Obviously, it was filled with drugs. It's here. It's so heavy. Carry it, Fanny said to Secretary Liu. Lin nodded. He happily carried the box of drugs in his hand and walked out of the office with Fanny. Boss, it's here, Fanny said to the general manager and pointed at Lin. Lin put the box on the coffee table, as he was told. He opened the box and showed the contents to President He. President He, please inspect the goods. The general manager nodded and said to President He, I believe that you are an experienced person. Before you came, you must have done your homework on the purity of the drugs. The goods I prepared for you are the highest purity. After all, you and I are both leaders of organizations. I wouldn't lie to you for a single transaction. He Luodan had done a lot of research on drugs. He did a preliminary inspection on the drugs in Lin Yi's box. It was just as the general manager said. The box was filled with high purity. He smiled in satisfaction. President He, if that's the case, then we'll do the transaction. With that, He Luodan took the box from the floor and put on the coffee table to show it to the general manager. However, this action of He Luodan made Lin Yi's heart skip a beat. This big box was filled with euros. From the size of the box, he could tell that there were at least a few hundred million in it. If he could get it, it would be able to solve the financial crisis of Yu Xiaoka's orphanage. With that thought, Lin quietly used his will and put the euros in the box into the jade space. The jade space wasn't big, but it was more than enough to put in the box of euros. In an instant, the box became empty. All the euros went into Lin Yi's jade space. At this time, He Luodan entered the password on the box. With a bang, the box opened. However, the box was opened. Other than Lin Yi, everyone was shocked. The box was empty. Of course, the most shocked person was He Luodan himself. His face turned dark, and his breathing became rapid. After a while, he said angrily, President, what is the meaning of this? President He, I was going to ask you. You brought an empty box to trade, and you're asking me why? The general manager's face darkened as well. The box was empty. The general manager thought that President He was trying to rob him. Why would I bring an empty box? Why would I bring an empty box to trade? He Luodan said as he lifted the box with his hand. He said coldly, this box didn't have any money in it. I carried it all the way here, and now that it's empty, do you think I wouldn't feel anything? President He, from what you're saying, you're not thinking that I took the money from the box, are you? The general manager asked coldly. Oof. He Luodan humphed. He didn't say it out loud, but the meaning was clear. President He, I have to remind you that this box has been under your feet since we came in. I didn't even touch it. Besides, do you think I can take the money without opening the box? What do you think I am? A magician? I don't think even a heavenly Tao master has the ability to teleport, right? This isn't something a practitioner can do. If it's not technology, then it must be some kind of supernatural ability. But do you think there's this kind of technology or supernatural ability? If I had this kind of ability, I would go to the bank and move gold bricks. I wouldn't have to sell drugs to earn money. The general manager's face regained its calmness. He explained indifferently, "Of course, this doesn't eliminate the possibility that President, he is trying to frame me. You, President," he was infuriated by the general manager's words, but he wasn't a stupid person. Indeed, the box had been at his feet since he came in. It didn't leave his body at all. Moreover, he was a peak late-stage heaven stage master. If someone opened the box and stole the money under his nose, it was impossible for him not to notice it. Moreover, the money in the box wasn't a small amount. Even if he wanted to move it, it would take some time. Who could steal it all at once? However, it was impossible to say that the box was swapped because the box's password was set by him. Moreover, there were some marks of the Overseas Cultivator Association on the box. It was impossible for the Red Conch to create such a box in such a short time. Moreover, who could have swapped the box under his nose? Therefore, President, he was a little puzzled at this moment. Did he see a ghost? Did he not bring the money here at all? He was a little uncertain. After all, this was very strange. If the money disappeared into thin air, then it would be really strange. All right, you have a computer here, right? I'll transfer the money to you. Hila took a deep breath. Although he was very puzzled, he couldn't stop the transaction. He didn't have cash, so he could only use the transfer method. Although if he really lost the money, he would suffer a huge loss. If he didn't continue the transaction, then he would lose everything. Chapter 32:68. Yes, boss. Fanny nodded and turned to go into the office to get the laptop. Lin E, on the other hand, followed Fanny like it was a matter of fact. He looked like he was eager to help. Fanny and the CEO didn't suspect Lin E in the slightest, since he'd been the one who'd helped them with the drugs. Fanny was obviously used to helping the general manager with this task. She turned on her laptop and opened the online banking page with ease. Then, she entered the Conch Group's company account number. Next, it was time for Luo Dan to enter the account number and password for the payer. "I'll help you." Lin E appeared just as Fanny was about to pick up the laptop, gesturing for Fanny to hold it for him. Fanny didn't think much of it and nodded. She let Lin E take the laptop, and Lin E and Fanny walked out together. Lin E, however, deliberately lagged behind Fanny by half a step. He'd been staring at the laptop since the beginning, and while Fanny wasn't paying attention, Lin E quickly typed on the keyboard. Lin E's hand speed was quite fast, or else he wouldn't have been able to steal the money from the scammers in Xinyan when he first came songs on. So, Lin E had already finished his work by the time he stepped out of the office. Lin E respectfully placed the laptop in front of Luo Dan after walking out of the office. "Chairman He, please enter your account number and password." The laptop screen was facing Luodan's side, and since he had to enter the password, neither the CEO nor Fanny could look at the laptop screen. Lin E, on the other hand, tried to avoid arousing suspicion. "The coffee's cold. I'll go get some hot water." With that, Lin E pushed the door open and walked out of the CEO's office. "Chairman He, please inspect the goods." The CEO nodded. "I believe you're an experienced man, and you've done your homework on the purity of the drugs before you came. I'll prepare it for you." Of course, Lin E didn't leave the office to get some hot water. Lin E wanted to run away. He'd already gotten what he wanted, and if he stayed here, wouldn't that be asking for trouble? And so, Lin E entered the elevator, but he didn't go down to the lowest floor. Instead, he went to the floor where the real Secretary Liu had fainted. He quickly walked into the bathroom and switched his clothes with Secretary Liu's, then massaged the back of Secretary Liu's neck a few times. Secretary Liu would wake up naturally in about 10 minutes. After doing all that, he quickly got into the elevator again and left Conch Group. He flagged down a rental car and left the place quickly. Upstairs, in the CEO's office. "Okay, CEO, I've transferred the money successfully. 300 million euros. That's the price we agreed on before." Luon pressed the confirm button on the computer, entered the SMS verification code on his phone, and completed the transaction. There's a notification on my phone. I just need to wait. The CEO saw that president. He transferred the money so quickly, and he nodded with satisfaction. He also relaxed his vigilance. It seemed that the Overseas Cultivator Association was still very sincere in the transaction. The euros in the box were gone. It might be an accident. However, after waiting for about 5 minutes, the CEO still hadn't received the notification of the money being transferred. He couldn't help but frown slightly. His account was set up in one of the most advanced and efficient banks in the world. Generally, the transfer would be received in real time. It was impossible for the money to not be transferred in 5 minutes. President, what bank are you from? Why hasn't the money been transferred in 5 minutes? The CEO couldn't help but ask. It's XX Bank. Don't we, who do gang business, usually set up accounts in XX Bank? It's safer and more efficient. Hiluan was slightly surprised. You haven't received it yet? That's impossible. It's the same bank as me. It shouldn't be so slow. The CEO also frowned, feeling that this matter was a bit strange. My phone has received a notification that the transfer was successful. If you want, can you call and check? Hiluan pondered for a moment and asked. All right. The CEO nodded, took out his phone, and dialed the bank's inquiry number. Of course, even Fanny didn't know the password for his account. She only knew the account number. After waiting for a moment, the CEO couldn't help but frown slightly. Then he hung up the phone and said to Hiluan, President, I didn't receive your money. Impossible. Look at the computer. It clearly showed that the transfer was successful. Hiluan was anxious, pointing at the computer screen, and said, Let me see. The CEO also felt a bit strange. Could it be that there was a problem with the bank system? He turned his head and looked at the computer screen that Hiluan moved over. It showed that the transfer was successful. 300 million euros has been transferred to the account. Seeing this, the CEO couldn't help but be surprised, then said, President, did you make a mistake? My account name is Conk Group Trading Company, Limited, not Songshan Orphanage. What Songshan Orphanage? Hiluan was also surprised, but when he saw the account name he transferred to, his face suddenly showed a surprised and angry expression. CEO, are you messing with me? This is the account name that your secretary entered for me. I don't fucking know anything about Songshan Orphanage. Fanny, what's going on? The CEO turned his head and looked at Fanny with some doubt. Boss, this is impossible. I don't know anything about any orphanage. I personally entered your account information. There's no mistake. Fanny said firmly. The CEO nodded. In his opinion, Fanny wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. Moreover, Songshan Orphanage had nothing to do with him. Even if there was a mistake, it wouldn't be so ridiculous. Chapter 3269. Fuck you. You're slandering me. Hiluan was so angry that his face turned red. He slammed the computer against the wall and smashed it into pieces. He jumped up and revealed his peak late-stage heaven-stage strength. In Hiluan's eyes, this was the CEO's plan. He and Fanny were just acting. Previously, he had felt that something was wrong. His suitcase of euros had disappeared for no reason. This time, the money had been transferred to some orphanage. Other than Hiluan himself, everyone here was the CEO's man. It was no wonder he was suspicious. Hiluan, are you playing games with me? Do you want to take my drugs without spending a single cent? The general manager also stood up, revealing his peak late-stage heaven-ranks power. In the CEO's eyes, Hiluan was playing tricks. First, he brought an empty suitcase to fish in troubled waters. When he saw that he couldn't fool him, he transferred the money to an orphanage account. Was he trying to fool them? Who's playing tricks? Who knows? CEO, if you give me the suitcase of drugs now, I can pretend that nothing happened. I'll admit that I'm unlucky to have lost the euros in the suitcase. Hiluan snorted. Don't tell me that the orphanage isn't your account. Hiluan, how can you say something like that? I think you're the one who wants to reap without sowing. Get lost now, and I won't pursue this. Our Conk Group doesn't welcome insincere partners like you. The CEO said angrily. You're courting death. Hiluan had never been this angry before. He couldn't take it anymore. He pulled out a whip from his waist. This was his heaven-stage divine weapon. He lashed it at the CEO. This soft whip was very similar to the heaven-rank sharp weapon that Little One used. However, Little One's whip was a genuine heaven-rank sharp weapon. As for Little One's whip, it was based on his impression of the Five-Elements sect when he was young. As for Little Yi's heaven-stage divine weapon, it was still in Lin Yi's hands. You're the one courting death, right? How dare you make a move in Conk Group's headquarters? The CEO was furious. He pulled out 2 hammers from both sides of his legs and threw them at Luonan. This was his heaven-stage divine weapon. Boom, boom, boom. A deafening sound echoed from the general manager's office as 2 peak late-stage heaven-rank experts fought. At this time, the real Secretary Liu, who was lying in the toilet cubicle, slowly woke up. However, he didn't know what happened to him. He only remembered that he came to the toilet, but he didn't know what happened after that. Did he faint in the toilet? Secretary Liu quickly checked his body. He didn't find anything unusual. There were no injuries on his body, and he didn't lose anything. He could only think that he was too tired these past few days and lacked sleep. So he fainted in the bathroom. In fact, he was really tired these few days, so he didn't think too much about it. At that moment, Lin Yi had already changed into 2 taxis and returned to the spa center. Lin Yi's goal had been achieved. Naturally, Lin Yi didn't know that the 2 peak heaven-rank powerhouses were already fighting. He would be speechless if he knew. He didn't expect that the account that Lin Yi casually changed was tricked by Luonan. Of course, if Luonan found out before the transfer, then the result would be different. At that time, the CEO definitely wouldn't think that it was Luonan or Fanny who changed it. Then, it could only be Secretary Liu. Therefore, Lin Yi was afraid that something might go wrong. Before returning to the spa center, he returned to his old appearance and entered the spa center. Then he quickly knocked on Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi's door and ran away with them. The car was stolen by Lin Yi before. It belonged to a local biker gang. It was probably a stolen car, so after it was lost, the biker gang didn't look for it and asked Lin Yi to stop it not far from the spa center. Lin Yi didn't explain and directly brought Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi to the nearest airport. At noon, a large passenger plane took off and flew to the nearest city. In the first-class cabin, Lin Yi booked 4 seats. Lin Yi sat in a row, Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi sat in another row, and the 2 seats were facing each other. It was convenient for the 3 to chat. Lin Yi, what happened? Cheng Yi whispered. Nothing, it's all settled. Lin Yi obviously didn't want to tell Cheng Yi and Su Shirhan about what happened in Rue Leda Town. He didn't want them to worry. And so, Cheng Yi didn't ask anymore and started chatting with Su Shirhan. When the plane landed in the nearest city to Island X, they got off the plane. Lin Yi, Su Shirhan, and Cheng Yi got on the plane that Yang Qiqi arranged for them to transfer to Island X. They breathed a sigh of relief. Up until now, they were completely safe. But Lin Yi was a little surprised. Such a big thing happened to the Conk Group. Why didn't they send a large-scale search for him? As long as he pulled up the previous surveillance footage, he could determine that the previous Yi Ling was a suspicious character. Then, after comparing him with Luo Dong, his identity was on the verge of being revealed. With the capabilities of the Red Conches and the Overseas Cultivators Association, it was possible for them to conduct a large-scale search in the vicinity. Why wasn't anyone intercepting them? But what Lin Yi didn't know was that the CEO and Luonan were both heavily injured. Both of them suffered serious internal injuries. But even so, the CEO didn't dare kill Luonan. He only asked the association to send someone to take Luonan away. After all, Luonan's death would be a huge grudge. But now, they were only heavily injured, and both of them weren't feeling well. This was the end of the matter. When they recovered and calmed down, they could talk about who was in the right and who was in the wrong. But for the time being, both of them were heavily injured, and they didn't have the chance to negotiate. If the person in charge didn't say anything, the subordinates wouldn't act rashly either. So this matter was delayed, and Lin Yi found a huge loophole. In fact, Lin Yi was a little regretful after entering the Songshan Orphanage's account. First, whether the transfer was successful or not. If He Luonin found out, he wouldn't be able to leave Rue lay to town. At that time, the association and Red Conch would send people to search for him. Chapter 3270. As for Heluadu, it wouldn't be easy for him to cause trouble here. After all, he had suffered a loss once. He wouldn't come for an orphanage again. Plus, they didn't know if this orphanage had anything to do with Lin Yi or not. After all, this was just a donation account for Songshan Orphanage. Anyone could transfer money to it. Maybe it was a charity account that Lin Yi randomly entered to trick Heluadu. But now that Lin Yi had safely arrived at Island X, there was no need to think about it anymore. Outside the airport, there was a car with a butterfly logo. Lin Yi knew that this was Yang Qiqi's car. Lin Yi was very familiar with this SIG. He'd worked for this organization for many years, and it was through this symbol on Qiqi's ring that he recognized Qiqi as an assassin of this organization. He treated Qiqi as well. After Lin Yi got off the plane, he got in the car with Su Shihan and Cheng Yi. As expected, Yang Qiqi was smiling and waving at them. What made Lin Yi nervous was that little Jiao was there too. This girl, who often helped Lin Yi in his daily life and missions, made Lin Yi's breath tighten. Lin Yi knew what little Jiao was thinking, but Lin Yi's thoughts were different from the past. At that time, Lin Yi thought that the people of the assassin group were all drifting without any future to speak of, and it was impossible for them to know their own future. So he ignored little Jiao's hints again and again. Including Yu Ning's confession, Lin Yi kept it in his heart. But it was different now, and Lin Yi's way of thinking had changed as well. Facing these feelings, Lin Yi didn't have the same concerns as before. After all, everyone's fate would be the same in the future. Little Nine was also an inheritor. In essence, she was no different from Meng Yao, Yu Shu, and Xiao Xiao. They were the same type of people. So, Lin Yi could be honest with her now. He just didn't know that when she saw him again, would the feelings in her heart still be love? A favorable impression from childhood might be able to persist stubbornly for many years, but when one became an adult and met again, one would realize that this favorable impression was just a child's play. In reality, things were still the same, but people had changed. When Lin Yi saw little Jiao again, his feelings were very complicated. Lin Yi didn't know what he thought of little Jiao as. Was she a childhood playmate, or just a little sister? Or did she have a trace of first love? To be honest, when Lin Yi was young, he really liked little Jiao and little Jiao, but as he grew older and knew his mission, he hid this trace of feelings in the bottom of his heart. Over time, Lin Yi didn't even want to meet little Jiao and little Jiao face to face, because after meeting, Lin Yi didn't know what to say. This was also the reason why Lin Yi didn't return to Island X, the place where he lived as a child, all these years. However, now Lin Yi had thought it through. Some things couldn't be avoided if you wanted to. Some people were destined to appear in the trajectory of your life. Just like Yang Qiqi, they met again and again in the trial. Like little Jiao, although they often contacted by phone, Lin Yi avoided the emotional problems between the two again and again. However, little Jiao unexpectedly became an inheritor. This made Lin Yi unable to avoid it again. The women around Lin Yi already had too many inheritors, and with little Jiao joining them, Lin Yi couldn't refuse. Fate seemed to be playing a joke on Lin Yi. Everything, from the beginning to the end, had never changed. Ninth Princess, long time no see. Lin Yi adjusted his emotions, got in the car, and greeted little Jiao. Oomph! Little Jiao saw Lin Yi, and although there was a flash of surprise in her eyes, she still snorted coldly. Long time? You didn't want to see me, right? Little Jiao's words inevitably made Lin Yi a little embarrassed. Lin Yi laughed dryly and didn't continue her topic. He turned to Yang Qiqi. Qiqi, the Overseas Practitioners Association didn't find trouble with you again, right? Not really. They just asked a little and didn't find me again. Yang Qiqi shook her head. The association, naturally, wouldn't be stupid enough to touch Yang Qiqi. After all, Yang Qiqi wasn't an independent practitioner without any foundation. Even if she was, questioning her without any evidence would chill the other members' hearts. Everyone joined the Overseas Cultivators Association to seek protection from the organization. However, if the members were to be suspected and questioned, who would want to join the association in the future? Fortunately, little Gio only complained to Lin Yi a little, venting her dissatisfaction. She didn't blame Lin Yi too much. She used to be in charge of the entire assassin organization's intelligence and coordination work. In her position, nothing in the assassin organization was a secret to her. Seeing assassins die from time to time, she was already numb. She knew what Lin Yi was thinking. Lin Yi was also an assassin, and he couldn't see his own future. Lin Yi couldn't promise her anything, and he didn't dare to promise her anything. That included her and Yang Chi-Chi. So, little Gio really didn't blame Lin Yi. Now, her identity had changed, and Lin Yi's identity had changed. Only then could there be a future, but this future was also very uncertain. That inheritor project, whether it was dangerous or not, whether Lin Yi could participate in it, these were all unknown. It could be said that although Lin Yi's thinking had changed, his situation wasn't any better. In fact, it became even more unknown. Lin Yi, bro, don't think too much. The future will come to an end. These days, let's just play on the ground like when we were kids, okay? Little Gio had thought it through and decided to cherish the good times in front of her. Okay. Lin Yi was also mentally and physically exhausted during this time. Plus, Lin Yi had to face the troubles that would come after he returned to Donghai City. His true strength had been exposed. Once he returned, the Black Horse Society, the Everyday sect, the Dongfang family, and even the ancient Feng family would come looking for him. When that time came, with so many people looking for trouble, how would he deal with them? Since he couldn't think of a solution right now, Lin Yi might as well stay here and relax. This time was too tiring. Chapter 3271. Lin Yi didn't have to worry about Miss Mengyao anymore. She was now the palace master of Dark Palace, and a palace master with real power. She was completely different from Yuan Heir, who would dare cause trouble for her. Shu's identity was there as well. She was the inheritor of Flaming Mountain. Even if House Yu didn't take care of her in the dark, she still had the name of Flaming Mountain. House Yu could show it to the world anytime, and no one would dare touch her. As for Wang Xinyan, although she didn't have any inheritor status, she was still Xiaolong's fiancée in name. With Kong Ming, the elder of the Sky Elixir sect, no one would dare touch her. The girls in the villa were fine. As for the others who were related to Lin Yi but didn't live with him, he didn't have to worry. The ancient people weren't that reckless. Common noble houses weren't much, but the ancient houses and sects wouldn't drag them down for no reason just because of Lin Yi. So, after considering the pros and cons, Lin Yi calmed down and stayed on Island X. Planning to relax for a few days, Lin Yi's considerations weren't wrong. When Elder Xianxin learned that the Everyday sect's pure Yang Sky Lord had broken through to Sky Class Late Phase Peak in order to avenge his junior brother, Purine Sky Lord, he was overjoyed. Father-in-law, this Everyday sect is really a strange sect. Hatred can actually increase the speed of training. It's really strange, Kong Ming said, confused. Yes, that's how their sect is, but how they train has nothing to do with us. It's useless even if we know their arts. Let's focus on the main points. Elder Xianxin had no interest in the other sect's arts. This was because he was restricted by the uniqueness of the practitioner's arts. Even if he knew someone else's arts, he couldn't practice it. He didn't even know the main points of it. He practiced blindly without anyone's guidance. Even if he destroyed his current arts and started from scratch, he might not be able to practice it successfully. Instead, it was easy for him to go berserk. This was why no one had ever studied Lin Yi's arts. Studying it wouldn't be useful, so what was the point? Yes. Shall we release the news now and inform the Dongfang clan, the Black Horse Association, and the Everyday sect? Kong Ming nodded and quickly asked, all right. It's time. Patriarch Xianxin nodded and agreed with Kong Ming's decision. In fact, Lin Yi didn't have much strength. He was chased by the Overseas Cultivators Association like a stray dog. The ones who killed those Heaven Rank Peak Late Stage and Perfect Heaven Rank Peak Late Stage experts were the three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect. For a time, the entire ancient era was in an uproar. However, since this news was released by the Five Elements sect, the ancient era's sects did not doubt it at all. After all, the Five Elements sect was a lofty existence in the ancient era. It was impossible for them to speak carelessly, and there was no need for them to speak carelessly. Moreover, for this kind of thing, as long as they had connections overseas, it would be fine. Which of these ancient sects did not have a personal friend in the Overseas Cultivators Association? After all, cultivators from the Overseas Cultivators Association would occasionally come to participate in trials, auctions, and other activities. Of course, most of the ancient era sects were shocked when they heard the news. Among them, there were also some who were angry and worried. The ones who were angry were naturally the sects that had people killed. At this moment, these people hated Lin Yi, but they hated the blood-clothed underworld sect. They hated them to the core. The blood-clothed underworld sect did not put the other ancient era sects in their eyes. You casually killed the high-level cultivators of other ancient era sections. This is simply breaking the rules. Are you so overbearing? Do you think you are invincible with two perfect heaven rank experts? Even powerful existences like the Five Elements sect are not as overbearing as you, right? Since Lin Yi is still overseas, then let's use the ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect as sacrifices. As for Lin Yi, after dealing with the blood-clothed underworld sect, there was no need to worry about not being able to deal with Lin Yi. These ancient era sects also knew very well that Lin Yi must have offered some conditions that the blood-clothed underworld sect could not refuse. However, no matter what the conditions were, the ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect were dead, and Lin Yi had no one to rely on. However, even if he could not kill the three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect, he had to kill the weakest, gloomy ancestor, and then make the blood-clothed underworld sect spit out a lot of benefits in order to appease the anger of these sections. This time, several ancient era sects that did not form an alliance with each other finally sat together. The Everyday and Everyday sect, the ancient Dongfang family, the ancient Feng family, and the Black Horse Society participated in this revenge meeting. Of course, Feng Tianhu only participated as a bystander and kept a low profile. His attendance was only to give advice and to confirm that Lin Yi did not have that kind of strength. Feng Tianhu, are you sure that Lin Yi really lost his strength? Dongfang Badeo's cold eyes looked at Feng Tianhu. If it wasn't for this Feng Tianhu who encouraged his daughter, the Feng family would not have lost so many people one after another. However, then again, the Dongfang family did not think that a small Lin Yi would cause so much trouble. Yes, Elder Dongfang, I placed a spy beside Su Shihan, and now this spy is also responsible for investigating the news related to Lin Yi. Feng Tianhu nodded affirmatively. That's right, Elder Dongfang. I placed a spy around Su Shihan, and he's in charge of investigating Lin Yi's whereabouts. Feng Tianhu nodded affirmatively and said, but what is certain is that Lin Yi did not lose his strength, but his strength was originally not high. The rumors outside were all exaggerated. This is all the credit of the blood-clothed underworld sect. So, as long as we destroy the blood-clothed underworld sect, or in other words, make the blood-clothed underworld sect stop, then we can kill Lin Yi? Dongfang Badeo nodded and asked, yes, or we have the ability to force the blood-clothed underworld sect to betray us and let them kill Lin Yi. This is the safest way to achieve the purpose of killing with a borrowed knife. Feng Tianhu continued to nod and said, this is a good idea. After Dongfang Badeo listened, he agreed, and then turned to look at the president of the Black Horse Society, Qian Peguang. President Qian, what do you think? Chapter 3272. Then, he continued, although we have 4 peak late heaven stage great perfection experts, the supreme elder of our Black Horse Society is in seclusion all year round and doesn't come out to ask about anything. It's a bit difficult to count on him to take action. I will try my best to convince him. However, even 4-peak late heaven stage great perfection experts may not be able to kill the 3 bloodcloth underworld sect great perfection experts. After all, these 3 old ancestors are not weak, and they have been living a life of blood all year round. In terms of combat experience, we are not as rich as them. Yes, I also agree with President Qin's point of view. Pure Yang Heavenly Lord said, I think, as long as we kill gloomy old ancestor and then force bloodcloth old ancestor and underworld ancestor to surrender, let them kill Lin Yi, we can turn weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk. This is the best way. I agree, Dongfang Badeo said quickly. Among them, his strength was the weakest. Although he was infinitely close to the great perfection strength, he was not yet. So in this way, if they wanted to kill the 3 bloodcloth underworld sect great perfection experts, 2 groups must fight to the death. Then, he and gloomy old ancestor would inevitably be the weakest existences. The 2 of them would also be the first sacrificial victims, which was not what he wanted to see. However, with so many people killing gloomy old ancestor together, and then forcing bloodcloth old ancestor and underworld ancestor to surrender, this was very easy to do. At that time, both sides would sit down and talk, and there would be no more fighting. Well, we have set this tone. We will kill gloomy old ancestor together, and then force the other 2 old ancestors to surrender. This way, our goal will be achieved. At this time, the most respected ancestor of the everyday and everyday sect, Ancestor Madbull, spoke. This was also the conclusion of the meeting, and it was the final decision. Then let's get ready. Tomorrow, we will rush to the headquarters of the Bloodcloth Underworld sect and find the 3 old ancestors. President Xian said. The early task of the vengeance meeting had been determined. Of course, if the Bloodcloth Underworld sect agreed to kill Lin Yi instead, then these people would not have to worry about it, and the second meeting would not be held. However, while these people found out about Lin, the 3 ancestors of the blood-clothed Netherworld sect also found out that Lin Yi was being hunted by the Overseas Cultivators Association. Bloodcloak ancestor, Yellow Spring ancestor, that's what happened. What should we do now? Ancestor Eerie Woods hurriedly relayed the news that the intelligence team had obtained to the 2 ancestors. Although Lin Yi has yet to return from overseas, I'm afraid that there will be a period of bloodshed when he returns, right? He reckoned that there was a big problem. Moreover, it's not just him who's the problem now. I reckon that those sects that lost people will want to take revenge on us, right? Ancestor Eerie Woods' words made the blood-clothed ancestor and Yellow Spring ancestor frown. Yes, things actually turn out like this. They didn't expect that Lin Yi's stroll overseas would cause so much trouble. If they had known earlier, they would have followed Lin Yi. At that time, the 3 ancestors thought that it would be troublesome for them to go overseas with their identity, so they didn't follow. Moreover, Lin Yi only went to help Su Shirhan and Cheng Yi contact overseas businesses. They didn't expect that there would be more problems. But now, it was useless to regret. They could only think about how to deal with the upcoming storm. Bloodcloak, it's better to call Master and ask for his opinion. The development of the situation now is not the time for the 3 of us to make a decision. Ancestor Yellow Spring pondered for a moment and said, That's right. Then who should make the call? Blood-clothed ancestor nodded and said in agreement. Let's go with Eerie Woods. We used to contact him through Eerie Woods. Ancestor Yellow Spring thought for a moment and said. Ancestor Eerie Woods didn't decline. He picked up the phone and dialed the number that Lin Dongfang left for them. Master, it's me, little Eerie Woods from Blood, Cloak, Yellow, Spring Sect. Ancestor Eerie Woods said politely after the call was connected. Oh, Eerie Woods, what's the matter? Old Man Lin picked up the phone. Since Ancestor Eerie Woods contacted him, there must be something big that they couldn't decide on. It's like this. Ancestor Eerie Woods didn't hide anything and told Lin Dongfang everything that happened in detail. In the end, he said, Master, we don't know what to do now. I'm afraid we can't protect Little Master anymore. Even we can't protect ourselves. I understand. Wait for my call. I'll give you an answer in 10 minutes. Old Man Lin said indifferently, as if this matter didn't affect him at all. Okay. Ancestor Eerie Woods said quickly. Old Man Lin hung up the phone and didn't stop. Although his tone was indifferent, the expression on his face was far from relaxed. He frowned and dialed another number. Old Mo, it's me. Old Man Lin dialed his old friend M.O. Conwin's number. What's wrong, old friend? What's the matter? M.O. Conwin asked. Literally, is there any trouble in the near future? Old Man Lin asked. What happened? M.O. Conwin asked quickly. It's like this. Old Man Lin told M.O. Conwin the situation in a concise manner. Let me take a look. After M.O. Conwin finished speaking, there was no more movement on the other side. Old Man Lin didn't panic. He knew that M.O. Conwin must be calculating something. As expected, after a while, M.O. Conwin said slowly, Yes, but it's not a dead knot. Can he resolve it himself? Old Man Lin asked after he relaxed a little. Maybe not. M.O. Conwin sighed and said, I can't interfere with what's happening now. My strength is only SOSO, comparable to his opponent. You haven't broken through yet? Old Man Lin asked quietly. Do you think it's easy to break through the heavenly Tao? Do you think everyone is as crazy as you? M.O. Conwin smiled bitterly. Then, will little Yi's life be in danger? Old Man Lin thought for a while and continued to ask. His future has already been decided. The moment he went to Songshan City and accepted that mission, it was already decided. M.O. Conwin didn't answer directly. I understand. Old Man Lin's heart was at ease after hearing this. Chapter 3273. Look for you? Okay, let's go over now. Gloomy Forest Ancestor was slightly taken aback and immediately understood Lin Dongfang's meaning. If someone wanted to harm them, then with Lin Dongfang around, no matter how bold they were, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. They had to suffer this grievance even if they didn't want to. Lin Dongfang didn't say anything more and hung up the phone directly. Gloomy Forest Ancestor relayed Old Man Lin's words to Blood Cloak Ancestor and Netherworld Ancestor. Blood Cloak Ancestor, Netherworld Ancestor, with Master here, there's no longer any suspense in surviving this calamity. However, in order to not implicate our sex, I suggest we act in a high-profile manner and directly announce that we're going to the West Star Mountain Village. This way, the people from the Everyday and Everyday Sect, Dongfang Clan, and Black Horse Society will directly go to the West Star Mountain Village to find us. Eerie Ancestor suggested. Your proposal is very good. Blood Cloak Ancestor nodded in agreement. Then let's go immediately. The three old ancestors left as soon as they said they would. However, before they left, although they couldn't say that they spread the news to everyone, they still marched towards the West Star Mountain Village with great fanfare. This action fell into the ears of the Everyday and Everyday Sect and the other two sects who were preparing to seek revenge from them. These clans and sects once again gathered together. This time, they originally decided to go to the blood-clothed underworld sect together. However, before they left, they received a piece of shocking news. The three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect actually went to the West Star Mountain Village. What kind of place was that? Pure Young Heavenly Venerate, your Everyday After Sun sect, is very knowledgeable. Do you know what kind of place this is? President Qian Buguang of the Black Horse Gang asked curiously. I don't know, but it shouldn't be a big place. How big can a village be? Pure Young Heavenly Venerate shook his head and said, Don't worry about where this place is. We should first figure out what the three ancestors of the Blood Cloak Underworld sect are doing there. I think it's possible that they know that we are going to retaliate against them. So, they deliberately found a godforsaken place to hide? Dongfang Badeo pondered for a moment and said, This was the only speculation he could think of. After all, the three ancestors of the blood-clothed Netherworld sect went to a place that they had never heard of, and it was a sudden move. It was a bit strange, no matter how one looked at it. Especially now, the three ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect must have received the news that the Everyday and Everyday sect, Dongfang Clan, and Black Horse Society were going to join forces to deal with them. There is this possibility. Heavenly Venerate Pure Yang nodded. Ancestral Master Wild Bull, what do you think? Kuang Yo was a man of virtue and prestige, but he spent most of his time in seclusion. He didn't have any other thoughts. He thought about it, but didn't say anything in the end. He turned to Pin Liang and whispered, Mr. Zhong, what do you think? This time, Zhong Pingyang participated in this revenge plan to gain experience for himself. First, he and Lin, he had a deep hatred. Second, after he ate countless treasures and elixirs, his strength finally rose to the peak of the late stage of Earth class. Now he was only one step away from Heaven class. If he wanted to break through, he must have an opportunity. Although the Everyday and Everyday sect also had elixirs like Gathering Chi Pill, Zhong Pingliang was a person who wanted to be promoted to the Heavenly Dao. He certainly wouldn't take any Gathering Chi Pill easily. However, Zhong Pingliang's current identity couldn't be exposed. His identity was only known to the disciples of the Everyday and Everyday sect. His identity to the public was a military advisor of Ancestral Master Wild Bull. Of course, it was understandable that Ancestral Master Wild Bull respected him a little. In the past, many emperors were courteous to military advisors, and the ancient sects who followed the ancient etiquette naturally didn't find it strange. So this wouldn't arouse the suspicion of others. I think that we've made a mistake. Zhong Pingliang said, faintly and majestically, we must know what the three ancestors of the Bloodcloak Underworld sect are doing. Why must we know? What they do has nothing to do with us. Our goal is to find them, kill them, or make them surrender. The world is so big. Except for Heavenly Island, is there any place we can't go as a group? It's really a wake-up call. Mr. Zhong is really a genius. Although Chunyang Tianzuan felt that Zhong Pingliang's words were reasonable, it didn't reach the state of enlightenment. However, he was Zhong Pingliang's disciple, so naturally, he didn't forget to flatter his master. And Dongfang Badeo and Qian Boiwang. Although they didn't think that Zhong Pingliang's words were so magical, they also felt that Zhong Pingliang's words were right. Their purpose was to find the three ancestors of the Bloodcloak Underworld sect to settle accounts. Who cared about what they were doing in the West Star Mountain village? Thinking of this, Dongfang Badeo also nodded. Mr. Zhong is right. Then let's pack up and get ready to go. So, the revenge squad formed by these people also followed the direction of a navigator and went to the West Star Mountain village. However, when they set off, the three ancestors had already arrived at the West Star Mountain village at this moment. For the masters of the peak late stage of Heaven stage and the masters of the peak late stage of Heaven stage, it actually didn't take too much time to run to the West Star Mountain village with their legs. In the yard last time, the ancestors of the Bloodcloak Ancestor, the Netherworld Ancestor, and the Mad Bull Ancestor once again met their master, Lin Dongfang, who they respected and feared. Bloodcloak greets the master. The three ancestors, who were highly respected and famous in the ancient world, at this moment in front of Lin Dongfang, greeted him respectfully like children. Well, you're here. Lin Dongfang glanced at the three people in front of him and nodded. Master, it's our fault. Not only did we fail to help the little master, but we also brought trouble to the little master. Now the three of us can't even protect ourselves. The ghastly forest ancestor had a bitter face and apologized carefully. Lin Dongfang waved his hand indifferently. Although he didn't get a clear reply from Mo Kongwan, Lin Dongfang already knew at this moment that he wouldn't have too big a problem. He should be able to get through it. As the saying goes, things will sort themselves out when they get there. Therefore, Lin Dongfang didn't blame the three people in front of him. In any case, the three people in front of him had good intentions. Without their help, he wouldn't be able to resolve the crisis so easily. Chapter 3274. Lin Dongfang said to them, All right, let's not talk about this. Have you eaten yet? Let's go. I'll treat you today. Let's go to Widow Wong's snack shop and have some wine. I haven't had meat in a long time. Old Man Lin's words made the three old ancestors speechless. Go to the snack stall to have a sumptuous meal? Did Lin Dongfang have to be so miserable? He was an elite in the Tao of Heaven. and he had actually fallen to a state where he had to go to a snack stall to eat. This was practically inconceivable. However, they didn't dare to say anything. In their opinion, old Lin didn't want to earn money because he wanted to train Lin E. Therefore, Ancestor Sun quickly said, "No need, we'll treat you, master. This small amount of money is nothing to the Blood Cloak underworld sect." Ancestor Sun didn't pretend to be polite. What he said was the truth. The Blood Cloak underworld sect was an assassin organization in the cultivation world. They had plenty of money. Lin Dongfang smiled faintly and didn't feel embarrassed. When little E was an assassin in his master's organization, he earned a lot of money for me. However, I donated it to the orphanage in the poor mountain area. Master is right. We should donate too. Ancestor Sun was a smart man. He quickly said, "No wonder little master always helps Songshan Orphanage. It's because of your teachings. We're deeply influenced. When we go back, we'll donate all the Blood Cloak underworld sect spare funds to Songshan Orphanage." That's not necessary. Lin Dongfang shook his head. It's not easy for you to earn money. It's fine if you donate some, but not all. This is little Yi's business. We shouldn't interfere. That's right. Master is right. If we interfere too much, he won't be able to gain experience. Ancestor Sun said quickly. As the four of them spoke, they arrived at the snack and grocery store opened by Widow Wong at the entrance of West Star Mountain Village. This was the only shop in West Star Mountain Village. "Dr. Lin, what do you want to buy?" Widow Wong asked passionately when she saw Lin Dongfang walking in. Lin Dongfang was a famous miracle doctor in the surrounding villages. Hence, he was highly respected by the people here. "Oh, I'm not buying anything. A few friends are here. Why don't you cook a few dishes for us? Let's drink a few cups," old Lin said to Widow Wong. "All right, it's still the same old thing, right?" Widow Wong knew what Lin Dongfang liked to eat. Although Lin Dongfang didn't come here often, he would come here once a month to eat. Especially when Lin E wasn't at home, Lin Dongfang would come here more frequently. There was no other way. When Lin E wasn't at home, there was no one to cook for him. Lin Dongfang had to eat a few times a month to satisfy his cravings. "Sure, give me 4 bottles of erguatu." Lin Dongfang nodded. "Okay." Widow Wong was quite trendy and could even speak English. The 3 old ancestors were all cultivators, so they naturally had a high tolerance for alcohol. Although the alcohol content of this erguatu was high, it was nothing to them. Soon, the dishes and wine were served on the table. Although the restaurant was small, there were a lot of food. There was fish and meat and vegetables, and there was no shortage of side dishes. What a great place. "Master, the 3 of us give you a toast to thank you for saving our lives." Old Ancestor Eerie Woods, Old Ancestor Netherworld, and Old Ancestor Shui stood up at the same time and raised the first cup of wine respectfully. Lin Dongfang had no choice but to raise his cup and accept it. As for Widow Wong, even though she heard what Old Ancestor Eerie Woods and the others said, she didn't care. Lin Dongfang was a doctor, so it was normal for him to save their lives. It was no big deal. In Widow Wong's opinion, Lin Dongfang treated the 3 of them, so the 3 of them treated Lin Dongfang to express their gratitude. Therefore, she deliberately served a few more dishes. Anyway, it wasn't Lin Dongfang who was paying. Since someone was treating, she should take the opportunity to sell more. Lin Dongfang saw that there were several times more dishes than usual, but he didn't stop them. After all, there were many people today. Moreover, Lin Dongfang usually went on a diet to donate to those poor children. Today it was Old Ancestor Eerie Woods and the others who were treating, so he ate more and enjoyed the good food. A few of them toasted each other. Only then did Ancestor Sun and the other 2 become more familiar with Lin Dongfang. Seeing Lin Dongfang gulping down wine and eating meat, it was hard for them to associate this harmless old man with the ruthless Vajra dual evils who had swept through the ancient times. After all, the difference was a bit too big. This kind village doctor and the terrifying Demon King were 2 different people. Of course, although they were puzzled, they did not doubt Lin Dongfang's ability. Generally, the experts had their own habits and tempers. However, when the 4 people were eating happily, a group of uninvited guests came to West Star Mountain Village. Young man, give me 5 pounds of sticky cakes. By the way, I will ask if there were a few old men who came to your village before, dressed like us. The one who asked the question was Dong Fongbadeo. The cultivators at the ancient level generally wore robes, which were relatively retro. Although the Dongfang family was trendy, Dongfang Badeo would still choose robes when he attended some important occasions. The young man who was asked was a street vendor of sticky cakes in West Star Mountain Village. Seeing that there was business, he was naturally very enthusiastic and said, "Okay, speaking of old men who are dressed similarly to you, there are indeed 3 of them. Are you all together?" As the young man spoke, he skillfully weighed the sticky cakes and handed them to Dongfang Badeo. "Yes, we are together. They arrived first. The mobile phone signal in your village is not very good. We can't get in touch with them. Can you tell me where they are?" Dongfang Badeo took out 100 yuan and handed it to the young man. He said, "Don't keep the change. The rest is the travel fee." Of course, if they searched door to door, they could find them, but it was easy to alert the enemy. If the 3 old ancestors wanted to hide, they couldn't find each other. Moreover, it was a bit unreasonable for the ancient level to openly interfere with the secular world, so Dongfang Badeo chose the most convenient way to eavesdrop. "Really? Thank you so much." The young man happily took the money, then pointed to the direction of the village and said, "Are you from the big city? You guys are really rich." They went to Widow Buzzhead's restaurant as soon as they arrived. Chapter 3275. Then you go ahead. I'm going to sell sticky cakes. The young man happily pushed the cart and left. Dongfang Badeo waited for the young man to leave, threw a piece of sticky cake into his mouth, and then distributed the bag to others. He was a little hungry, chewing the sticky cake, and wondered, "You say the 3 people of the blood-clothed Yellow Spring sect came here and went to eat. What do they mean? Did they come to this deserted village just to have a meal?" It was no wonder that he thought so. When they came to West Star Mountain Village, their first impression was that it was extremely desolate. It was hard for them to imagine why the 3 ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect came to such a remote and backward place. Did they want to inspect the terrain and move the blood-clothed underworld sect to this place? Only the ancient sects would choose such a remote place, right? In addition, Dongfang Badeo really couldn't think of a second possibility. Who knows, but although this place is remote, it is good to develop a sect. Could it be that the blood-clothed underworld sect feels that they have offended too many people, so they want to move their headquarters here? President Qianbo Wang took a bite of the sticky cake, then frowned and said, "Who cares what they do? Let's go and settle accounts with them directly." Zhong Pingliang was a little eager to try. He had been dead for so long, and it had been a while since his resurrection. He had not been out of the everyday sect. This was the first time he came back to the underworld, and he was naturally eager. "Yes, Mr. Zhong is right. We are not roundworms in the stomach of the blood-clothed underworld sect. Why do we care what they do? Let's go and settle accounts with them directly." Piryang Tianzuan said immediately after listening to Zhong Pingliang's words. "That's right, then let's go." Dongfang Badeo nodded. They walked toward Widow Wang's grocery store at the head of the village. When they saw the shabby grocery store, they frowned. The 3 ancestors of the blood-clothed netherworld sect were people who had seen the world. How could they eat in such a low-class place? Was there something wrong with them? However, several people still walked into the grocery store. What surprised them was that, on a table not far away, they saw the 3 ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect, Ancestor Netherworld, and Ancestor Insen. However, there was another person sitting opposite them, and they didn't know what this person was doing. Of course, they didn't care. Who cares what this person was doing? Irrelevant people dared to meddle in other people's business. "Bosses, are you here to buy or to eat?" When Widow Wang saw another group of well-dressed people, she thought that they were in cahoots with Patriarch Netherworld and the others. She thought to herself, "I'm really lucky today. I'm going to make a fortune." President Qianbo Wang of the Black Horse Gang took the lead. He didn't pay attention to Widow Wang. In his eyes, Widow Wong was almost the same as an ant. His purpose here was to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. He wanted to kill ancestor Ensign and force the remaining two ancestors to submit. In fact, from a personal point of view, the hatred between the blood-clothed underworld sect and the president of the Black Horse Gang was not the biggest. Qian Buowang actually looked down on the dead Supreme Elder. That person was an expert of the older generation who first stepped into the peak late stage of Heaven Stage. He didn't put Qian Buowang, the president, in his eyes. Even if Qian Buowang was promoted to the peak late stage Heaven Stage Great Perfection, that old thing still ignored him. To be honest, when his strength was weaker than him, Qian Buowang tolerated it. After all, although he was the president, in the cultivation world, strength was respected. So, the other party ignored his orders. But now he was also an expert of the peak late stage Heaven Stage Great Perfection, and the other party still had such an attitude. It was a bit problematic. Therefore, this person was dead. From Qian Buowang's point of view, he didn't need to be angry. However, from the perspective of the Black Horse Gang, this person was an expert of the peak late stage Heaven Stage Great Perfection. He was the pillar of the Black Horse Gang. His death would have a huge impact on the overall strength of the Black Horse Gang. Of course, there was another point. The person who killed the elder on the stage was from the blood-clothed underworld sect. It was reasonable to say that the blood-clothed underworld sect and the Black Horse Gang were both ancient sections. They took people's money to eliminate disasters. The two were similar in nature, but there was no conflict in their business. Therefore, they had always appreciated each other and minded their own business. Now, the blood-clothed underworld sect broke the rules first. How could Qian Buowang not be angry? Therefore, this hatred was huge. Today, he must personally kill old ancestor Ensign to restore the Black Horse Gang's face. Otherwise, he would be the president for nothing. Hey, you guys, you are. Widow Wong looked at the people who entered the door. Their faces were all gloomy. Suddenly, her heart trembled. Could it be that these people were not here to eat? Were they here to cause trouble? But I'm just a small shop in a mountain village. I haven't offended anyone. Why are they here to cause trouble? You stay away. We are here to find someone to settle the score. It's none of your business. Dongfang Bideo looked at Widow Wong coldly and said overbearingly, looking for someone? Widow Wong was shocked. In this house, besides old Lin, there were only 3 people who were dressed like them. Could it be that they were here to find those 3 people? These 3 people were really troublemakers. Don't implicate Dr. Lin. If something happened to Dr. Lin, who would the patients in the surrounding villages find for treatment? However, although she was anxious, these people were obviously not here with good intentions. Widow Wong didn't dare to say anything. She could only cough twice as a warning and let old Lin quickly leave. These people could do whatever they wanted. She could only admit that she was unlucky if the shop was destroyed. Blood-clothed, underworld, Sun, we didn't expect it, right? You hid so far away, but we still found you? Pure Yang Empyrean snorted coldly and looked at the only customer in this small shop. It's useless to hide. Today, we are here to avenge our dead brothers. Pure Empyrean died in your hands, right? We, the blood-clothed underworld sect, take money from others to eliminate disasters. This has always been our rule. If those who died had the same idea as you, then we wouldn't be in this business, blood-clothed old ancestor said faintly. Chapter 3276. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Qian Puguang's words were mocking Blood Cloak Ancestor. Unexpectedly, Blood Cloak Ancestor nodded seriously and said, "Yes, our Blood Cloak Underworld sect does have a strong background and a strong backer. Of course, we are not afraid that someone will come to seek revenge." Huh? Qian Puguang was slightly stunned, and then laughed even harder. Did you hear that? These 3 old things said that they had a backer, and a very powerful one at that. Ha ha! I say, have you heard that the Blood Cloak Underworld sect has a strong backer? No. Dongfang Bideo simply shook his head. What about the friends from the Sun Restore Sun sect? You are one of the oldest ancient sections. Have you heard of the backer of the Blood Cloak Underworld sect? Qian Peguang turned to look at Pure Yang Heavenly Venerate and continued to ask. No. Pure Yang Heavenly Venerate also shook his head. Haha, Blood Cloak Ancestor, you are really funny. At this time, you still want to lie to us. Do you think we will believe it again after believing that Lin Yi can fight against enemies of a higher level? Qian Peguang said mockingly. Since you have a backer, we won't kill you first. We'll give you a chance to ask for a backer. Call your backer out, and we'll talk to him. Let's see what kind of idiot dares to be your backer. Okay, that's fine. The blood-clothed ancestor nodded seriously. Then, he said nothing more. After listening to Blood Cloak Ancestor's words, Qian Peguang was stunned, but he still waited patiently for Blood Cloak Ancestor to continue. However, after waiting for a long time, Blood Cloak Ancestor did not continue to say anything. So he asked impatiently, Where is he? Your backer? Why don't you move? He is far away, but close at hand. Blood Cloak Ancestor made an introduction gesture and pointed at Lin Dongfang. At this moment, Lin Dongfang was sitting with his back to the people, so these people had been in for so long and directly ignored him. What? Qian Peguang's eyes widened, and then he laughed until he was out of breath. Ha! I say, you guys are not serious, right? You randomly found a country bumpkin and told me that he's your backer? Don't tell me this old farmer is your backer? Yes. Bloodcloak Ancestor nodded and said, Mr. Dongfang is the boss behind the Bloodcloak Underworld sect. Puffed. Cough, cough, cough. Qian Peguang almost burst out laughing. Mr. Dongfang? Don't tell me he's from the Dongfang family? The head of the Dongfang family, Dongfang Badeo, is here. Oh no, his name is Dongfang. As for his surname, you don't deserve to know. Ancestor Bloodcloak said faintly. Lin Dongfang had never revealed his name in the ancient times. Only a few people who were close to him knew his name. Really? Mr. Dongfang, then stand up and show us why you dare to be the backer of the Bloodcloak Underworld sect. Since you're the boss behind the scenes, we'll let you pay for this. Qian Peguang still did not believe that Lin Dongfang was the backer and the boss behind the scenes of the Bloodcloak Underworld sect. The reason was very simple. In his opinion, the old farmer was a temporary scapegoat that the Bloodcloak Underworld sect found. Perhaps Ancestor Bloodcloak and the others thought that by pushing this person out and then being killed by them, they could avoid their punishment. They underestimated their intelligence too much, didn't they? Well, since you won't want to talk to me, then I'll talk to you. Lin Dongfang smiled slightly and stood up from his seat. At this moment, the laziness of a country bumpkin doctor was all gone. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of domineering and indifference of a superior. Hearing old Lin's pretentious words, Qian Peguang laughed again. Behind him, the people who came with him were basically thinking that the old farmer was a scapegoat that the Bloodcloak Underworld sect found. However, the old farmer didn't know that he was going to die soon. Lin Dongfang stood up and slowly turned around. His eyes were bright and full of expression as he stared at the people who had come to the grocery store. Among them, there were unfamiliar faces and also familiar faces. For a moment, he was filled with emotions. You. Why you? You are. The first person who recognized Lin Dongfang was actually Zhong Pingliang, but it was no wonder. How could he forget the person who killed him with one punch? What a terrifying memory it was. He, the Mad Dragon Ancestor, a peak late-stage heaven-class great perfection expert, was actually killed with one punch? Who would believe it? However, this had really happened and existed more than a decade ago. During the years in the tomb, the person in front of him was the Mad Dragon Ancestor's nightmare. Even after the Mad Dragon Ancestor came back to life with Zhong Pingliang's body, the person in front of him was one of the people he didn't want to see the most in his life. Yes, it was too tragic. Zhong Pingliang looked at the person in front of him and didn't even have the slightest intention of fighting back. This was the absolute difference in strength, an insurmountable moat. It was different from the grudge between him and Lin Yi. Zhong Pingliang and Lin Yi, no matter what, had the same starting line. They were both high school classmates. He felt that he had the ability to kill Lin Yi, But this person in front of him, Zhong Pingliang, felt that even if he trained for 100 years, it would be a waste. Even if he really ascended to heavenly Tao, he probably wouldn't be this person's opponent. After all, this person was said to be a heavenly Tao master more than a decade ago, or maybe even higher. Lin Dongfang looked at Zhong Pingliang suspiciously. He didn't know this person, nor had he seen him before, but he did see the person beside him. Guangyou, right? I haven't seen you for more than a decade. What are you doing here? Lin Dongfang smiled at Guangyou Ancestor and asked. Guangyou Ancestor broke out in a cold sweat. He recognized the person in front of him. Wasn't this one of the killer Vajra? Why was he here? Didn't he disappear? Did he bring a group of people to Jindao? But no matter how Lin Dongfang appeared here, Guangyou Ancestor was trembling in fear, but he didn't dare to ignore Lin Dongfang's question. He had no choice, his mind raced. Guangyou Ancestor suddenly saw the bucket of soy sauce in the grocery store and was overjoyed. He quickly said, Mr. Dongfang, I'm here to buy soy sauce. With that, Guangyou Ancestor turned to look for Widow Wang, shouting, Lady Boss, give me some soy sauce. Sigh, this soy sauce, it's gone so quickly. Chapter 3285. Accept me as a younger brother. The reaction of the Mad Bull Patriarch made the people present stunned, and his performance finally made Dongfang Bideo and another elder of the Black Horse Club, who was silent all the way and did not say a word, recognize Lin Dongfang. Of course, it was not that they didn't want to recognize him before, but they didn't dare to recognize him. After all, there were too many similar people in this world. They didn't want the person in front of them to be that person. If the person in front of them was that person, then he was the behind-the-scenes boss of the Bloodcloth Underworld sect. Then, what revenge could they take? It would be good if they could go back. This little friend, do we know each other? Lin Dongfang looked at Zhong Pingliang and asked with some doubts. Among them, except for Zhong Pingliang, Qian Boguang of the Black Horse Gang, and Pure Yang Tianzuan of the Day and Everyday Sect, he had an impression of the others. He had seen them more than 10 years ago. Zhong Pingliang said the word I 3 times in a row. He was so scared that his legs went soft and his eyes went black. He fell to the ground and foamed at the mouth. He fainted from fear. Lin Dongfang was stunned. He had never seen the little friend in front of him, but this person fainted directly, which made Lin Dongfang very puzzled. Let's go out and talk. Lin Dongfang didn't want to expose his identity in the village. This was not in line with his purpose of living in seclusion, so he didn't wait for the others to speak and took the lead to go out of the grocery store. The Bloodcloth Ancestor, the Yellow Spring Ancestor, and the Ensign Ancestor followed him out of the grocery store. The Mad Bull Ancestor looked at Zhong Pingliang, who fainted on the ground, but he wouldn't laugh at him. After all, the big brother, the Mad Dragon Ancestor, died under this person's fist. It was inevitable that he would be scared when he saw the person who sent him to heaven again. Picking up Zhong Pingliang, the Mad Dragon Ancestor took the lead to step out of the grocery store. As for the Pure Yang Tianzuan, although he had never talked to Lin Dongfang and had dealings with him, he had seen this person's appearance and ruthlessness from a distance, so he was also scared at this time. Seeing the Mad Bull Ancestor go out, he quickly followed. The rest, Dongfang Bideo and the elder of the Black Horse Gang in seclusion, also followed out of the grocery store. However, the president of the Black Horse Gang, Qian Boguang, was very inexplicable at the moment. What was wrong with these people? Why didn't they speak when they saw such an old farmer from the mountains? Could it be that this old farmer was a master? However, even if this old farmer was also a master at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage, there was no need to be so afraid, right? Including this old farmer, the Bloodcloth Underworld sect only had 3 masters at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage, plus 1 master at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage. On his side, there were 4 masters at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage, plus 1 master at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage. The advantage was still very obvious. However, since everyone had left, Qian Boguang was the last to leave the grocery store with his doubts. Only Widow Wang, who had sold a bottle of soy sauce at a sky-high price, was left behind. She looked at the group of people who had left in confusion. Just now, the Mad Bull ancestor bought a bottle of soy sauce and directly gave 100 yuan, which made Widow Wong stunned for a long time. When she came back to her senses, these people had already left. Widow Wong felt that this was a TV show. What kind of sect was this, a martial arts film? After all, these things were too far away from a rural woman like her. She never thought that these things were real, so she just threw them to the back of her mind. In her opinion, Old Lin was probably also a guest actor. Otherwise, how could these people be stunned with just a few words and not dare to speak? This must have been planned in advance in the script. Otherwise, how could a village doctor have such great ability? Thinking of the bottle of soy sauce she sold, she wondered if there would be a chance for her to appear on TV. If there were really scenes of her on TV, then she would be famous. Thinking of this, Widow Wong immediately became proud. She hummed a little tune and kept the 100 yuan. Of course, she was really ignorant. There was not even a cameraman here. So how could it be a TV show? But she had no experience, so how would she know these things? Therefore, she planned to see Old Lin again and ask him when the TV show would be aired. Lin Dongfang took the lead and walked in front. His pace was very fast. Although he was not a cultivator, his speed was not slow. Soon, he arrived at the West Star Mountain, not far from the spiritual spring water. Lin Dongfang came here with a plan. After all, there were so many people, and with his current stamina, he couldn't take them all down. At most, he could take down 2 or 3, but after that, he would have to drink the fountain water to replenish himself. Otherwise, his body would be abnormally weak like air gooden. At that time, his weakness would be exposed, so this fountain water was used to save his life. Since there was no one else here, Lin Dongfang decided to be frank. He looked at the people behind him and said, "The 3 ancestors of the blood-clothed underworld sect are my servants. What they do is also tacitly approved by me. If you have any opinions, you can tell me." At this time, Pin Liang had finally woken up after the long journey of Master Kuang-Yo. But after hearing Lin Dongfang's words, he almost fainted again. He quickly said, "No objections, no objections." "Ha! How could we have any objections?" "Ha! Why didn't you say so earlier?" "Bloody Shirt, Yellow Spring, Een Sun, you're all Mr. Dongfang's servants. Then can you take me as a servant too?" "Ha! A follower is fine too. I don't have any follower plans yet." Lin Dongfang looked at Pin Liang, his face getting weirder and weirder. Just who was this person? Where did he come from? Pin Liang's words echoed in the ears of most of the people present. It was no wonder that these people had witnessed Lin Dongfang's power in the past, but there were a few who didn't know who Lin Dongfang was. This was the leader of the Black Horse Gang, Qian Boguang. Back then, he wasn't the leader of the Black Horse Gang yet. He was just a normal elder on a mission outside, so he wasn't afraid of Lin Dongfang at all. Pin Liang might be scared shitless and wanted to be Lin Dongfang's servant, but in Qian Boguang's eyes, Pin Liang was just a strategist, a normal Earth class. It wasn't surprising that he was a coward. "What's wrong with you guys? Just who is this old thing? Didn't we agree to kill the gloomy elder together now?" Qian Boguang started panicking when he saw that everyone wasn't moving. Chapter 3277. He naturally didn't dare to act rashly in front of Lin Dongfang. Didn't he see how scared his senior brother was? Elder Kuang-Yo actually understood Pin Liang's situation. He had died once in the past, and he didn't want to die again. With his current strength, he wouldn't be able to preserve his soul with a secret technique again. He would probably die for real. "Little Qian, this senior Dongfang is a master. Don't be rash." The elder, who hadn't said a word along the way, finally spoke. But the moment he opened his mouth, he scolded Qian Boguang. This little Qian made Qian Boguang a little angry. If it was in the past, it would have been fine. But now, everyone was a peak late phase heaven class master. What right did he have to take advantage of his seniority, especially in front of outsiders? How could he, the leader, endure this? So, Qian Boguang snorted coldly without thinking. "What's wrong with you guys? I don't believe that even if the opponent is a peak late phase heaven class master, we don't have to be so cowardly, right? If you guys don't make a move, wait for me to kill this old man first. In Qian Buguang's opinion, no matter how powerful Lin Dongfang was, he couldn't exceed peak late phase heaven class master. Because this was already in existence like an atomic bomb. Heavenly Dao Masters couldn't exist before the Heavenly Island project started. So even if he couldn't beat him, it would at most be a draw. Moreover, the Black Horse Gang was also good at fighting. Unlike those peak late phase heaven class masters who didn't have much combat experience, Qian Buguang improved his strength through fighting. So, he believed that if he fought against an expert of the same level, he could gain the upper hand and not lose. Thinking of this, Qian Buguang sneered and said, "Elder in seclusion, it's fine if you're a coward. Not everyone is as cowardly as you. What senior's back? I'll kill him now." As he spoke, Qian Buguang rushed forward. From his point of view, since Lin Dongfang was an obstacle to killing Elder Yin's son, then he would first kill this person in front of him or injure him. That would be enough. Of course, the main purpose was to establish his authority. In the Black Horse Gang, the Elder in seclusion didn't even put him in his eyes. He wanted to prove that he was stronger than the Elder in seclusion. Others didn't dare to make a move, but he, Qian Buguang, dared. "Little Qian, come back." The seclusion Elder was shocked. He didn't expect Qian Buguang to be so blind. In this kind of situation, he still dared to find trouble with Lin Dongfang. Wasn't he looking for death? Isn't it to show that you're capable? Do you think that all the experts here are cowards? If it wasn't for the fact that they were no match for him, who would admit defeat? Everyone here was a top-notch expert, and they wouldn't easily admit defeat. But today they were acting strangely. Wasn't this worth pondering? Even if you haven't seen Lin Dongfang, you should be able to see the situation clearly, right? However, it would have been better if the seclusion Elder hadn't called him that. Now that he called him that, it was the opposite of what he wanted. A wave of anger and humiliation surged from his ribs to his brain. "You still call me little money? Who is small? I'm also an expert at the peak of the late stage of heaven class." Qian Buguang was incomparably angry. Because of this, he was even more eager to prove his ability. He shouted loudly and continued to attack Lin Dongfang. Not only did he not stop, but he also took out his heaven-ranked godly weapon from his waist. It was a silver snake soft sword. This kind of weapon was easy to carry and was also very useful for killing people. This was what the Black Horse Gang did. Even if Qian Buguang's godly weapon hadn't killed an expert at the peak of the late stage of heaven class, it had killed an expert at the peak of the late stage of heaven class. The seclusion Elder was scared out of his wits. Did this Qian Buguang not want to live? Even if he didn't want to live, he didn't want to implicate the Black Horse Gang. The seclusion Elder wanted to stop him, but he didn't have the strength to do so. First, both of them were experts at the peak of the late stage of heaven class. Second, if he caused Lin Dongfang to misunderstand and kill him as well, what would he do? So while he was hesitating, Qian Buguang was already close to Lin Dongfang. He was powerless to reverse the situation. Swoosh! A sharp whistle sounded. Qian Buguang attacked. The silver snake's soft sword in his hand was like a poisonous snake, slashing towards Lin Dongfang's neck, taking someone's head as soon as he attacked. This was the style of the Black Horse Gang. They didn't show mercy, they didn't attack. However, what made everyone suspicious was that Lin Dongfang stood there without dodging. It was as if he didn't notice that the silver snake's soft sword was about to take his life. Could it be that Lin Dongfang was scared silly? As soon as this thought came out, everyone rejected it. If the person in front of them was the person from back then he wouldn't be scared silly by such a small scene. The only possibility was that Lin Dongfang didn't put Qian Buguang in his eyes at all. Of course, the seclusion Elder was scared, and so were Zhong Pingliang and the others. Zhong Pingliang cursed in his heart. Qian Buguang, this idiot, was he trying to kill everyone? Didn't he know that they looked like they were on the same side? Gotcha! Just when everyone had their own thoughts, the silver snake soft sword made contact with Lin Dongfang's neck, making a crisp sound. What? Everyone couldn't believe it. Lin Dongfang didn't dodge and let the silver snake soft sword cut his neck? Wasn't he looking for death? Even if he was a heavenly Dao master, he couldn't be invincible, could he? The Silver Snake Soft Sword, a heavenly class divine weapon, was a precious weapon that could cut through iron like mud. Wasn't he going to lose his head? Especially that Katja sound. Everyone thought that Lin Dongfang's head had already fallen to the ground, but what made everyone's jaws drop was that the Katja sound wasn't Lin Dongfang's neck being cut off, but Qian Puguang's silver serpent flexible sword was broken. Boom dash. Just when everyone was shocked, Lin Dongfang finally punched. It was just a punch, a simple punch, but it hit Qian Puguang's chest, making a loud sound. As for Qian Puguang, his entire body was sent flying backwards. There was a clear, large hole in his chest, demonstrating the unimaginable power that Lin Dongfang's seemingly ordinary punch had brought about. Qian Puguang's eyes rolled back when he was in the air. When his body landed heavily on the ground far away, he couldn't be more dead. Absolute silence. Although everyone was mentally prepared for this sudden turn of events, they were still deeply shocked once again, especially Zhong Pingliang, who opened his mouth wide and panted heavily, his whole body shaking, because this was how he died back then. Chapter 3278. Blood Cloak Ancestor, Yellow Spring Ancestor, and Sinister Ancestor, the three ancestors of Yellow Spring sect, were shocked as well, but they were the most excited. As expected, Lin Dongfang was as powerful as before, killing a peak late phase Sky class master with one punch. So the power of the young master, Lin Yi, was inherited from this place. That's amazing. That's amazing. Pingliang's fear was replaced by deep admiration, a reverence that came from the bottom of his heart. He felt that he would never be able to reach such heights in his life. Plus, in the Everyday and Everyday sect, Mad Dragon Ancestor's second disciple, Mad Leopard Ancestor, didn't feel ashamed of being a disciple of the Killer Kong duo, but was proud of it instead, making many sects envious. Now, Pingliang was envious of Blood Cloak Underworld sect. Fuck, no wonder they were so arrogant, daring to kill anyone. They had a strong backing. Pingliang seized the opportunity and cheered loudly. Senior Dongfang, does your family know you're so arrogant? No. Lin Dongfang shook his head. Pingliang had praised Lin Dongfang thoughtlessly, thinking that Lin Dongfang was very, very strong. He hadn't expected Lin Dongfang to respond to him. He paused for a moment, then grew excited. Haha, I understand. Senior Dongfang, how about you take us in as your followers as well? Just like Blood Cloak Underworld sect, back then in my sect, Mad Leopard Ancestor was your disciple. We could be considered quite close. We'll see. Lin Dongfang waved his hand, not used to Pingliang's enthusiasm. Little friend, what's your name? Have we met before? Oh, Senior Dongfang, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Pingliang, and I'm currently the strategist of Everyday and Everyday sect. My words represent the Everyday and Everyday sect. Am I right, Mad Bull Ancestor? Pingliang said as he looked at Mad Bull Ancestor. Yes, Mr. Zhong is one of the decision-makers of our Everyday and Everyday sect. Kuan Yu nodded. Pingliang was only an Earth class, but he was still his big brother. In the past, their eldest senior brother's awe and care for them were still vivid in their minds. Patriarch Kuang Yu and Patriarch Kuang Long's relationship was actually very deep. Don't look down on the fact that the Everyday and Everyday sect was a demonic sect, but the relationship between them was even more important than some large sects and clans. This was also the reason why Heavenly Venerables Pure Yang and Pure Yin had such a good relationship. Zhong Pingliang, Lin Dongfang felt that the name was familiar. He thought about it and was slightly surprised. Wasn't this kid Yi's enemy? Why did he want to be his little brother? It was really a little strange. Yes, Senior Dongfang can just call me Liangzi, Pingliang said quickly. All right, we'll talk about other things later. Who else wants to settle the score with me? Lin Dongfang looked at the others. How is that possible? The retreat elder was surprisingly talkative, Senior Dongfang. Although Qian Buiguang is the president of our Black Horse gang, his actions represent himself and have nothing to do with me. Now that he is dead, I'm the decision-maker of the Black Horse gang. My intention is similar to this, Mr. Zhong Pinliang. You see, one sheep needs to be driven. 2 sheep also need to be led. Why don't you also accept us as your little brothers? Now that we are out here, we don't feel at ease without a backer, and we don't have the courage to go out. What about you? Lin Dongfang did not respond to the retreat elder, but turned to look at Dongfang Badeo. Although Dongfang Badeo was a little dissatisfied in his heart, he did not dare to say anything at the moment. However, he would never put down his face to be a little brother. After all, apart from the elders of the Dongfang family who died, his grandson, Dongfang Buliu, died in the hands of the disciples of the Everyday and Everyday sect. Asking him to be with the Everyday and Everyday sect, he could not do such a thing. As for why the Everyday and Everyday sect wanted to be Lin Dongfang's little brother together with the blood-clothed underworld sect after the death of Master Purine, perhaps it was because Master Purine had no blood relationship with them after all. Moreover, the decision-maker of the Everyday and Everyday sect was Zhong Pinliang, not Master Purine. In the sect, the master was the most important. Even if the relationship between the brothers was good, they could betray for the master. This was the rule in the sect, and Master Pure Yang must abide by it. The grievances between the Dongfang family and the blood-clothed underworld sect end here. Thank you, Senior Dongfang, for not killing me. I will leave first. Dongfang Badeo held his fist and said slowly. Dongfang Badeo's words made Zhong Pinliang frown. What? You mean you have nothing to do with the blood-clothed underworld sect, but you still have a grudge against Zhang Naipeo of our Everyday and Everyday sect? Old thing, whatever you want, you can go and die. Now our Everyday and Everyday sect is not afraid of you. When we recognize Lin Dongfang as our boss, we are even less afraid of you, and we can kill you at any time. But at this moment, Zhong Pinliang still said in a strange tone, you really won't die if you don't seek death. Some people just want to court death. After listening to Zhong Pinliang's words, Dongfang Badeo was a little annoyed, but in front of Lin Dongfang he did not dare to act rashly, and could only snort coldly. Snort what snort? I say Qian Guang, that idiot, we all want to recognize the boss, but he doesn't. Isn't he seeking death? Zhong Pinliang's words were insinuating. After all, Dongfang Badeo did not have the intention of recognizing the boss. Zhong Pinliang was scolding the locust. You? Dongfang Badeo was angry, but, thinking of his grandson who died, he must avenge this hatred. Well, if there's nothing else, please go back. Lin Dongfang could feel his physical strength. If he killed another one, he would definitely show signs of weakness. If it was seen by others, it would not be good, not to mention that Dongfang Badeo would not let him kill. So he continued, I am now in a state of seclusion. I hope you keep my news a secret, otherwise, Lin Dongfang did not say it, but the people present all shuddered at the same time. Perhaps Lin Dongfang's otherwise would be the end of Qian Guang? Don't worry, boss, we will keep it a secret. Zhong Pinliang was the first to respond to the call. I've said that I have no intention of accepting a younger brother. Lin Dongfang said coldly, but I have a successor. If there is a chance in the future, I will introduce you, and you will be his younger brother. Chapter 3279. For Zhong Pinliang's address, Lin Dongfang was too lazy to argue. He waved his hand and motioned for everyone to leave. Seeing that Lin Dongfang let them go, everyone hurriedly left West Star Mountain Village, leaving only the Blood Cloak ancestor, the Yellow Spring ancestor, and the Ensign ancestor. I'm a little thirsty. I'm going to drink some water. You guys drink some too? Lin Dongfang casually walked to the spirit spring, then picked up a bowl of water with his hand and sent it directly into his mouth. We won't drink. The 3 ancestors just drank wine, and they were not thirsty at all. Besides, how could they drink the spring water found casually in the mountains? Although they felt that Lin Dongfang could not harm them, it was not good to drink something bad. Lin Dongfang did not insist, drank the water casually, and prepared to go down the mountain. Let's go back and drink 2 more cups. Okay. The 3 ancestors quickly nodded and said yes, The retreat elder of the Black Horse Club took Qian Wang's body, said goodbye to Ancestor Kuang Yu, Dongfang Badeo, and others, and left in a hurry. At this moment, he had no thoughts of revenge. He regretted that the Black Horse Club provoked this pool of muddy water. 2 masters of the peak of the late stage of Heaven class died, and the Black Horse Club suddenly changed from a top ancient sect to a mid-range ancient sect. But who could be blamed for this? Before, the mission was not good. When you go out on a mission, you must have the awareness of death. It is impossible for everyone to be killed by you. You may also be killed by others. And Qian Wang was completely looking for death. He called him several times, but he still couldn't see the situation clearly. Who could be blamed for this? Although the retreat elder was in retreat all year round, this time he had to come out to take charge of the Black Horse Club. At least until the next successor was cultivated, he could continue to retreat. And Dongfang Badeo, after the retreat elder left, looked at the people of the day and everyday sect, shook his head, and quickly left. Although he had a lot of hatred in his heart, he also knew that this was not the time, and he could not directly fall out with Ancestor Kuang Yu and others. Idiot! Zhong Pingyang looked at the back of Dongfang Badeo as he left, spat, and scolded. Such a good opportunity to find a backer, and you don't know how to grasp it. You are really blinded by hatred. I've already been killed once, but I didn't have such a huge grudge. Eldest senior brother, this kind of person isn't worth getting angry at. Just like you said, he's courting death. If he didn't, he wouldn't have died. Ancestral Master Mad Bull nodded in agreement. He felt that after his eldest senior brother was reborn, his words were very trendy and reasonable. Lord Master, Ancestor Wild Bull, what should we do now? Heavenly Lord Pure Yang asked carefully. Although Heavenly Venerate Pure Yang was already a peak late-stage heaven rank expert, he was still very careful in front of the 2 ancestral masters and never dared to overstep. Let's return to the sect. Pin Liang waved his hand. Then what about Lin Yi's side? Heavenly Venerate Pure Yang asked carefully. We'll talk about it later. Let's wait and see what Bloodcloak Underworld sect and Lin Yi's employment rules are like. If Bloodcloak Underworld sect wants to interfere, then there's nothing we can do, Pin Liang said, feeling a headache coming on. You're right, Lord Master. Heavenly Venerate Pure Yang nodded. Let's put it aside for now. The vengeance meeting that alarmed the entire ancient level actually ended anticlimactically. All the parties involved remained silent and didn't mention the result of the vengeance. However, it wasn't hard to see that the members of the vengeance meeting didn't achieve their desired goal from how the Bloodcloak Underworld sect was unscathed. However, as for what happened and what the real result was, the parties involved were all tight-lipped. Outsiders had no way of knowing. They could only guess that Bloodcloak Underworld sect wasn't a pushover. They wouldn't allow others to change their ways. In this way, Bloodcloak Underworld sect's reputation in the ancient level also rose. At least in the next few years, Bloodcloak Underworld sect had distanced itself from Black Horse Gang. When cultivators hired assassins, the first person they thought of was Bloodcloak Underworld sect and not Black Horse Gang. Of course, it was said that the Black Horse Society had also entered a period of recuperation. Apart from some small missions, they had also stopped accepting large missions. Missions involving Earth rank and above would all be directly rejected, even if the target was at the initial stage of Heaven rank. This was enough to show the low profile of Black Horse Gang. Although everyone still didn't know what happened, there were no walls in the world that didn't have ears. The death of Black Horse Gang's president, Qian Piguang, was still spread in the ancient level. The specific cause of death was unknown. Anyway, it must be related to this vengeance plan. As a result, these people looked at Bloodcloak Underworld sect differently. Bloodcloak Underworld sect actually killed Qian Piguang. For a time, Bloodcloak Underworld sect became famous. However, the key point was that even Feng Tianhu, another member of the vengeance meeting, didn't know. No one dared to tell him the truth. No one dared to mention Lin Dongfang's matter. Hanging up the phone with Dongfang Badeo, Feng Tianhu frowned. Before this, he had already contacted the Everyday and Everyday sect and Black Horse Gang, but both did not reply to him. Instead, they hung up the phone very coldly. As for Dong Fongbadeo, although he wasn't cold, he definitely didn't have a good temper. He didn't mention anything about the matter at that time. He just told Feng Tianhu to calm down and not think about finding trouble with Bloodcloak Underworld Sect. If you don't want to find trouble, then don't. Anyway, I have no grievances with Bloodcloak Underworld Sect. Feng Tianhu snorted coldly. His main purpose now was to rise. What medical school, Underworld Sect, what Lin Yi, they had nothing to do with him. So, he shook his head and began to study the next plan against Feng Tianlin and Feng Shipian. So many major events happened in the cultivation world. Lin Yi, who was far away abroad, also received a call from Guxian. Guxian, how is it? Is there any news over there? Lin Yi quickly picked up the phone and asked, Boss, now there's a rumor in the ancient world that you don't have the ability to kill experts at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage and Great Perfection. You are overseas and being chased by the Overseas Cultivators Association. Guxian said anxiously. Well, what else? Guxian's news was not unexpected to Lin Yi. Lin Yi had already guessed what Guxian said. After all, after Cheng Yi sent back the news, Lin Yi made this plan. Moreover, it was absolutely impossible for the Overseas Cultivators Association to keep secrets for Lin Yi. Chapter 3280. Guxian told the news to Lin Yi in detail. By the way, they found out that the Heaven Stage experts were killed by the Blood Underworld sect. Oh. Lin Yi could not help but frown. These people actually found out that it was the Blood Underworld sect? To be honest, Lin Yi felt a little sorry for the three ancestors of the Blood Underworld sect. Although the people were killed by these three, he also gained some benefits. So, Lin Yi quickly asked, then, did they go to the Blood Underworld sect? They should have gone, but there was no result. The people of the Blood Underworld sect were unharmed, but the president of the Black Horse Gang, Qin Paguang, died. Of course, I can't find out how he died. I only know that he died. Guxian said, the current situation is that the members of the Vengeance Assembly are all silent. I don't know what agreement they reached with the Blood Underworld sect in secret, but it turned into the current situation. Oh, that's really strange. Lin Yi frowned. Guxian, an ancient expert, did not know the inside story. Lin Yi did not need to rack his brains to think about it. There must be something unknown in it, but with Lin Yi's current level, he might not be able to reach it. Thinking of this, Lin Yi said, then, other than that, is there any news of them coming to me? Not for the time being. I don't know what the people of the Blood Underworld sect said to them, but they all stopped. Guxian said, there is no news of any progress at the moment. Okay, I got it. Help me pay attention to the movements of these people. If they want to find me, tell me immediately, Lin Yi said after pondering for a moment. Although the situation was very strange, Lin Yi still decided to wait for the situation to stabilize before going back. For the time being, it was better to rest here and observe. No problem, boss, Guxian quickly said. After hanging up, Lin Yi wasn't in a good mood, but he didn't show it in front of Yang Qiqi and Jiu. After all, it had been so many years since he left Island X, and it was rare for Lin Yi to come back. He just wanted to have fun with the two. At least, these few days on the island, Lin Yi found the feeling of his childhood. Su Shihan and Cheng Yi were also very fond of the island scenery. However, when they saw the teams of assassins undergoing strict training, they could guess how cruel and boring Lin Yi's childhood was. Brother Lin Yi, I want to eat mud fish. Can you help us catch some fish today? Yang Qiqi missed the mud fish of her childhood. Of course, she didn't know whether it was because of her childhood or the life and death experience during the Heavenly Elixir Sect trial. It was also during the Heavenly Elixir Sect trial that Yang Qiqi and Lin Yi were able to recognize each other. This mud fish could be said to be a childhood memory, and it could also be said to be the matchmaker for the two. Therefore, Yang Qiqi had special feelings for it. Okay, I'll go now. Lin Yi smiled and nodded. This mud fish was also very particular in making it. It must be made with yellow mud from the river. Although the fish supplied on Island X could be used to make it, there was no mud, and the taste of wild fish and raised fish was also different. It's more dangerous over there. You guys don't need to go. I'll go alone. Lin, he said to everyone. Although with Yang Chi-Chi and Chang Yi's skills, there was still Jiao and Su Shirhan. Lin, he couldn't let them stay here, so he went alone. Okay, Brother Lin, be careful, Yang Chi-Chi said. She was also the owner of Island X, so naturally, she couldn't ignore the guest just because she wanted to go catch fish with Lin Yi. Lin Yi nodded and quickly walked in the direction of the jungle of the back island. On the way, Lin Yi was filled with emotions. The familiar path, the familiar environment. However, he hadn't been back here for more than 10 years. Now, when Lin Yi walked this road, it was still as familiar as when he was a child. Coming to the river with ease, Lin Yi plunged into the river and began to catch fish. However, after Lin Yi caught a fish, he suddenly realized that he forgot to bring a bucket. It was okay to catch 1 or 2 fish, and he could carry it back directly. But there were so many people, and everyone's appetite was good. At least 10 or 20 fish had to be killed. Moreover, this fish was not big. How was Lin Yi going to take it back? Going back to get the bucket, Lin Yi didn't want to bother too much. Suddenly, Lin Yi had an idea. Didn't he have the space of the jade pendant? How good would it be to put the fish directly in it? Lin Yi had put food in the jade space before, but the food was still in the jade space. In other words, the state of the food was still the moment it was cooked. When he took it out, it was still hot and fresh. So, Lin Yi planned to put the live fish in the jade space. This way, if he brought it back, it would still be fresh. With that thought, Lin Yi wanted to put the fish in his hand into the jade space. But what surprised Lin Yi was that the fish was still in Lin Yi's hand. It didn't enter the jade space. This was the first time this had happened. Could it be that the jade space wasn't working? Lin Yi paused and subconsciously wanted to put the fish in his hand into the jade space again, but again, it failed. There was no fish in the jade space, and the fish in Lin Yi's hand didn't disappear. It's really strange. Lin Yi frowned and tried to use his mind to take out a spirit beast chi inner pellet from the jade space. This chi inner pellet was successfully taken out from the jade space. Lin Yi moved his mind again, and the chi inner pellet returned to the jade space again. In this way, it was certain that the jade space didn't fail, but something went wrong. Could it be that the thing that was put in was different? Jiao Lao, why can't I put my fish in the jade space? Lin Yi asked curiously. A living thing? Of course not, Elder Jiao said with a straight face. Living thing? Aren't you and I alive? Lin Yi was slightly stunned and asked. You and I are not in a normal state. Your spirit entered the jade space, and I'm almost the same. It's not a real body. Jiao Lao said, there is no oxygen here. How can a living thing survive in here? So that's the case. Can I only put the fish in the jade space after it's dead? Lin Yi thought about it and asked. Chapter 3281. Temporarily? Does that mean I can put living things in here in the future? Lin Yi heard something special in Jiao Lao's tone. I remember, after the jade space was upgraded, it had such a function. But your level is not high enough, the stone door is not open, and my memory is not fully recovered. So I can only say this much. Jiao Lao said, Oh, that is to say, even if I continue to refine the jade space, I will not be able to achieve this function? Lin Yi thought for a while and asked, Yes, if you continue to refine the jade space, you will only be able to expand the capacity of the jade space, but you will not be able to upgrade its function. Jiao Yazi said with certainty this time. All right, these few days, Lin Yi had planned to use the blue crystal and the remaining pure yellow jade and colored steel to refine the jade space. But now, it seemed that refining it would only expand the storage capacity of the jade space and not change its function. This made Lin Yi a little disappointed, so he temporarily gave up the idea of refining it. Forget it. Then I will use the remaining materials to refine the profound chi necklace. These few days, Lin Yi couldn't decide whether to continue refining the jade space or the profound chi necklace. Refining the jade space, Lin Yi was 90% sure. With his previous experience, he could make it 100% successful, but the profound chi necklace was different. Although the profound chi necklace could be made by a first-level yellow-class blacksmith, in Lin Yi's opinion, since the lowest-level blacksmith was the yellow-class blacksmith, since he could refine the jade space, he should be a yellow-class blacksmith. In theory, he could refine the profound chi necklace. Of course, this was just theory crafting. In reality, unexpected things could happen, and it wasn't something Lin Yi could control. There was a certain amount of risk involved, and if the materials were wasted, the necklace wouldn't be completed. Lin Yi's trip to the ocean would be a complete waste, and it wouldn't be worth it. But now, it seemed that it was better to refine the profound chi necklace. The jade space wasn't big, but it was enough for Lin Yi. Lin Yi couldn't carry everything around with him, and there was no need for that. Since the jade space couldn't hold live fish, Lin Yi had no choice but to take off his shirt and use it as a net in the water. He put all the fish into it and hung it by the river. After that, he went back to fishing, catching 20 fish in one breath. Only then did he carry his dripping shirt back to the lawn, where he was chatting with Chi-Chi and the others. Linny bro, you're using your shirt to hold fish? Young Chi-Chi was a little surprised. Although Lin Yi's bare upper body made her blush a little, the two had lived together since young, and she was used to it. Su Shirhan and Chung Yi, on the other hand, lived in Lin Yi's villa. It was inevitable that Lin Yi would wear a little less, but he had never worn so little. The two were a little shy, but because they liked Lin Yi, it didn't scream. Little Nine, on the other hand, looked at Lin Yi's muscles with interest. Linny bro, I didn't think that your body is so good now. Sigh, I'm afraid that my body is the worst here. Little Nine's words made Lin Yi pause. But looking at Little Nine's skinny body, Lin Yi felt pain in his heart. Yes, all these years he had been avoiding Little Nine, but he had neglected her feelings. Little Nine was different from normal people. She could only sit in a wheelchair, and she didn't exercise. Her body was very thin, and even after so many years, she was still like a little girl. Her chest and whatnot were very developed. Little Nine, you are. Lin Yi looked at Su Shirhan and Chung Yi, but he didn't hide it. These two, Lin Yi could trust them. You're an inheritor. When you become a practitioner, not only will your body be very good, but your strength will also be higher than mine. Haha. Yes, fortunately I have this opportunity. Little Nine smiled. Going to the Yellow Earth High Sect was her opportunity, but it was also a challenge. The future had become uncertain. Not long after, I will leave. My brother, Tu Ba Wong, will come and pick me up. Linny bro, will you send me off? And I will. Lin Yi nodded without hesitation. Although there were a lot of troubles on Lin Yi's body, and the balance between him and the ancient sex could be broken at any time, but Lin Yi also knew that this farewell, he didn't know when he could see Little Nine again. Lin Yi must send her off. I'm just saying, Linny bro, you don't have to send me off. I know it's not easy for you to come overseas. The Overseas Cultivators Association is currently your enemy. Little Nine shook her head and didn't wait for Lin to speak before saying, Okay, let's make some mud fish. Lin Yi was silent for a moment, but he didn't say anything, but he had already made up his mind. Now, although Lin Yi's strength was at the peak of the early phase of the heaven rank, he could truly kill a peak mid-heaven rank expert. When Lin Yi was at the early phase of the heaven rank, although he couldn't instantly kill Dongfang Jian, he could still get rid of him when he was injured. Now that Lin Yi was at the peak of the early phase of the heaven rank, he could naturally kill a peak mid-heaven rank expert. As for whether he could kill a peak late heaven rank expert, it was still unknown. At present, Lin Yi had only fought with He Tianzu, a peak late heaven rank expert. He could only injure him, but he couldn't kill him. But he hadn't fought a peak late heaven rank expert yet. However, Lin Yi believed that if the Essence Necklace's records were true, he would be able to increase his strength by a whole level after wearing the Essence Necklace. Whether it was his offensive or defensive abilities, they would all increase correspondingly. In other words, after wearing the Essence Necklace, Lin Yi would be equivalent to a peak mid-heaven rank expert. And at that time, it would be very easy for Lin Yi to instantly kill a peak late heaven rank expert. This way, Lin Yi's strength had increased yet again, and he had more cards up his sleeves. He wouldn't be caught off guard when he returned. Of course, facing a Sky-class late-phase peak, Lenny might not be able to win, but he would be able to heavily injure them if he caught them off guard. He Tianzhu wouldn't be lightly injured. Thus, this essence necklace seemed to be an important thing. Chapter 3282. Secondly, he needed to get himself to Sky-class mid-phase as soon as possible. If he was Sky-class mid-phase, then the necklace would be like adding wings to a tiger. With that in mind, he looked at Chi-Chi. Xiao Qi, can you get a Qi gathering pill? Qi gathering pill. Chi-Chi paused. Lenny bro, you need it? But doesn't it say that you won't be able to level up on your own after eating it? Yang Chi-Chi wasn't a spiritual practitioner, but she had some basic knowledge. Haha, I'm a little special. I can level up after eating it. Lenny didn't hide it. It wasn't a secret after all. Everyone around he knew about it. Xiao Qi, doesn't the association provide free pills to their members? Do you have the right to get one? He turned his attention to the association. If Tang Yuqi could get a Qi gathering pill from the association, then Chi-Chi should be able to as well, right? As long as you're a member of the association, you have the right to get one. As long as your strength reaches the corresponding level, you can apply for it. Chi-Chi explained, but I'm a physical practitioner. There's no way I can get a Qi gathering pill. That's fine. You can practice both internal and external. Lenny said, if your spiritual strength reaches Earth-class late-phase peak, then would you be able to get a Qi gathering pill? That's for sure, Chi-Chi said with certainty. But after receiving it, if you successfully break through to Sky Class, you'll have to become an elder of the association. It's impossible for you to leave the association like Tang Yuqi did. There are pros and cons to this, too. It's free, but it's still like selling your body. Chi-Chi said with certainty. What if you don't succeed? Lenny asked. After all, a Qi gathering pill could allow an Earth-class late phase peak to break through to Sky-class early phase. But it wasn't 100% success. There was a chance of failure, just a small one. If you don't succeed, you can apply for it again half a year later, but that's your last chance. Chi-Chi said, there have been failures in the association, but they all succeeded the second time. I see. Then can you help me apply for a Qi gathering pill? He was a little excited after hearing Chi-Chi's words. This was what he wanted. It wasn't realistic for Yi to rely on Kong Ming pill, especially now that Yi's true strength was exposed. A snobbish person like Kong Ming wouldn't care about him at all. So he had to think on his own. But it sounds easy, but it's very difficult. My father left me a spiritual practitioner's arts, but I still put all my effort into it. I don't have any foundation for it at all. Chi-Chi smiled bitterly. Even if I start training now, I don't know when I'll be able to reach Earth-class late-phase peak. Lenny bro, I'm afraid I won't be able to help you with this. Haha. Don't worry. We can start now. Yi smiled. Do you remember the spiritual practitioner's arts? Can you recite it? If you can, we can start now. Now? What do you mean, train here? Chi-Chi's eyes were wide, not understanding what Lenny meant. Yes, now, but I'll be the one helping you. Lenny said, I can help other people level up quickly. It's just that we parted in a hurry last time, so I didn't get the chance to help you. This is a good chance. You'll help me level up? Chi-Chi was even more shocked. Lenny bro, you're saying that you can help me level up to Earth-class late-phase peak. That's right, that's it. Lenny nodded. All you need to do is practice the arts. Leave the rest to me. Really? Chi-Chi was a little surprised, but she still said, but there's no rush. If I become an Earth-class late-phase peak right now, even the association would start suspecting me. I need to take it step by step, so it's best for me to level up to Earth-class early phase now. I'll show up at the association and let them prepare themselves. You're right. He nodded solemnly. He'd only considered the possibility of getting a Qi gathering pill from the association, but he didn't consider the possibility of the association suspecting Chi-Chi. Of course, if Chi-Chi could level up step by step, that was something the association would be happy to see as well. After all, one more master meant one more power. They wouldn't have gone to all that trouble to keep Tang Yuqi around. And so, as long as he did it right, getting 2 chi-gathering pills wasn't impossible. But the second pill had to be given to Chi-Chi herself, or the association would definitely suspect something. Chi-Chi had leveled up so quickly before, and that was enough to show that she was quite talented. If she didn't level up after 1 or 2, then there would be a problem. Lin, he wouldn't need to be afraid of the association if he took 2 chi-gathering pills. But Lin, he couldn't stay overseas for long, could he? Chi-Chi's base was overseas, too, and Lin, he didn't want to cause trouble for her. Then I'll raise you to Earth class early phase first. Lin, he nodded. All right, I just need to chant the practitioner's arts, right? Chi-Chi asked. Yes, leave the rest to me. Lin, he said. As long as he didn't forcefully compress his chi to break through, then his clothes wouldn't explode. Lin, he didn't have to worry about Chi-Chi running around naked. Chi-Chi started chanting, and Lin, he grabbed her wrist and started chanting as well. Under everyone's curious gaze, Lin Yi's chi flowed into Chi-Chi's body. Shirhan and Cheng-Yi, on the other hand, were a bit weaker. After all, they had already witnessed Lin Yi's miraculous power back at the orphanage. However, it was still a little shocking for someone who had no spiritual training whatsoever to rise all the way to Earth class early phase. Chapter 3283. If Lin Yi could mass-produce Sky-class masters, then who in the ancient world would be a match for Lin Yi? Cheng-Yi was glad that she made the choice. Otherwise, she would have to follow Feng Tianhu to the end. Nothing good would come out of that, right? Little Nine was shocked as well. She and Lin Yi had been separated for so many years, but they had always kept in contact. She thought that she understood Lin Yi's situation very well, but it seemed that she didn't understand Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi had a lot of miraculous things that she didn't even know about. Where did he get these miraculous abilities? Of course, the one who was the most shocked was Yang Chi-Chi herself. She channeled her practitioner's arts and felt that her strength was growing like a force-fed duck. From a physical practitioner without any spiritual foundation, she rose all the way to early phase of golden class, and it was still growing. Early phase of golden class, early phase of golden class, peak. All the way to early phase of earth class, Yang Chi-Chi felt like she was dreaming. In such a short period of time, she went from nothing to something. Her strength had such a huge increase. This completely overturned Yang Chi-Chi's understanding of practitioners. Based on her previous understanding, which cultivation expert did not take one step at a time to get to where he was now. There had never been anyone who could become an Earth-class early phase master in just one afternoon without any inner strength. This was probably one of a kind, wasn't it? Everyone present, other than Su Shirhan, felt the change in Yang Chi-Chi's strength. Because Yang Chi-Chi was channeling her practitioner's arts, her strength was directly exposed. Little Nine didn't have much strength, but he'd been exposed to practitioning when he was young, so he could still recognize a practitioner's aura. Cheng-Yi, on the other hand, was quite shocked as well. How did Chi-Chi become the same as her in the blink of an eye? Cheng-Yi felt the urge to cry. One had to know that it wasn't easy for her to get to where she was right now. She'd been trained by Feng Tianhu since she was young, and all she did was train and train. That was how she got to where she was today. But look at Yang Chi-Chi. She'd become an Earth-class early phase the moment she got close to Lin Yi. Am I dreaming? Yang Chi-Chi's question was what everyone else wanted to ask. Haha, you can go to the association now and announce the news. As for the reason, you'll have to figure out yourself. I don't really know much about the overseas world. Lin Yi said to Chi-Chi. Yeah, I know. I'll just say that my family told me to keep it a secret, but I've hit a bottleneck at Earth class, so I'm here to look for some resources. Chi-Chi said, finding an excuse very quickly. After all, her family was different from other practitioners. It was reasonable for them to have this rule. The association wouldn't say much. All right, get moving then. I'll continue to help you when you get back. Lin Yi said. Yes, I'll go tomorrow. Chi-Chi nodded. Lin Yi was about to get up when he raised his head to see the envious Cheng-Yi beside Chi-Chi. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that this girl wanted him to help her level up as well, but she was too embarrassed to ask. E. I'll help you level up to Earth Class Late Phase Peak 2. Lin Yi had gone from being wary of Chung Yi to trusting her now. Lin Yi could feel that Chung Yi liked him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have betrayed Feng Tianhu. After all, Feng Tianhu still had her brother's trump card. Now that Lin Yi had revealed his true strength, Chung Yi couldn't put all her hopes on Lin Yi anymore. Chung Yi still supported Lin Yi. This touched Lin Yi. At the very least, Chung Yi was sincere. She wasn't just trying to get on his good side. She wanted him to save her brother. Chung Yi froze after hearing Lin Yi's words. Actually, back in the orphanage, Chung Yi had wanted Lin Yi to help her get stronger, but she was too embarrassed to ask. Their relationship wasn't that good back then, and she didn't succeed in seducing Lin Yi. She gave up. After all, she knew that the relationship between her and Lin Yi wasn't as good as it seemed on the surface. Perhaps Lin Yi was still guarding against her, but she didn't think that Lin Yi would take the initiative to bring this matter up. Chung Yi, of course, didn't know that her loyalty to Lin Yi had earned her a good impression from Lin Yi. She thought that Lin Yi was being nice. Really? Chung Yi was at a loss. She looked at Lin Yi and couldn't believe it. Of course it's true. You're one of us now. It's reasonable for me to help you get stronger. Lin Yi waved his hand and said, Okay, let's begin. Chung Yi saw that Lin Yi was so straightforward, so she didn't hesitate anymore. She reached out her hand and handed it to Lin Yi, and so, under everyone's numb gazes, Lin Yi raised Chung Yi's strength to Earth Class Late Phase Peak as well. At night, Lin Yi didn't care about Chi-Chi and Chung Yi's excitement. He greeted everyone and went into isolation to study the Essence Necklace. He took out the Essence Necklace book from the Jade Space and flipped through it carefully. He'd read it once when he first started forming the forging fire. The Golden Class Blacksmith Practitioner's arts were too hard to practice, so he'd given up on it for now. But now, Lin Yi was familiar with the Jade Space, and the Essence Necklace only required a Golden Class Blacksmith. As far as Lin Yi was concerned, if he could create a Jade Space, he should be able to create an Essence Necklace as well. Lin Yi continued reading the refining method. The basic requirement for condensing is a blacksmith. Blacksmith? Lin Yi smiled. It had been a headache for Lin Yi when he first got the book, but now, Lin Yi could give it a try. Life really was unpredictable. Many things could be solved with the passage of time. Then, he continued to read. Base material required for refining. A piece of high-grade jade pendant. Chapter 3284. Jiao Lao. It's written here that a jade pendant is required to refine a profound chi necklace. I wonder if my jade pendant can be used for refining? Lin Yi asked. It was better to ask Jiao Yazi about this kind of thing. Lin Yi didn't dare to make a decision on his own. Of course it can. Jiao Yazi didn't play dumb this time. Instead, he said with certainty, from the refining method, a small space in the jade pendant was expanded to store the 5 spiritual chi inner elixirs. Therefore, your jade pendant won't be damaged. You can refine it without worry. Even if you don't succeed, the jade pendant won't be damaged. At most, your spiritual chi inner elixir will be destroyed. It's painful to have my spiritual chi inner elixir destroyed. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Lin Yi had spent a lot of effort to collect these 5 spiritual chi inner elixirs. Lin Yi would be very sad if they were destroyed just like that. It's better than having my jade pendant destroyed, isn't it? Jiao Lao asked with a smile. That's true. Lin Yi nodded. After preparing the 5 spiritual chi inner elixirs, pure topaz, blue crystal, and colored steel, Lin Yi took a deep breath and started to refine the profound chi necklace. Although the jade pendant wouldn't be damaged if it wasn't refined successfully, all the materials would be destroyed. Lin Yi had spent a lot of effort to collect these materials. For this blue crystal, Lin Yi almost lost his life. Therefore, it was impossible for him to be careless. After carefully reading the instructions of the profound chi necklace several times, Lin Yi carefully placed the colored steel, pure topaz, and blue crystal in a certain proportion on the ground. Then, he took off the jade pendant on his neck. Before making the necklace, Lin Yi once again read the instructions on how to condense the profound chi necklace several times. Of course, the instructions were relatively simple, not much different from condensing the space inside the jade pendant, but there were a few more steps. Fortunately, Lin Yi had the experience of successfully condensing the jade pendant space in one try, so this time he could successfully condense it. The first step of condensing was exactly the same as condensing the space inside the jade pendant. Of course, what Lin Yi used was also the mantra he used to condense the space inside the jade pendant, not the mantra he used to condense the profound chi necklace. Because the mnemonic chant was too complicated, Lin Yi didn't have the confidence to learn it, nor did he want to try. Fortunately, the beginning of the condensation was very smooth. It was the same feeling as the first time Lin Yi condensed the space in the jade pendant. Lin Yi's hands kept condensing the forging fire, and from time to time, he also needed to use his hands to change the shape of the auxiliary materials, and then fuse them with the jade pendant. After repeating this several times in a certain amount of time, he finally reached the most important step, which was completely different from condensing the space inside the jade pendant. Because the space needed for the 5 profound chi inner elixirs was very small, it didn't take much time and materials. Previously, when Lin Yi was at home, it took him 3 days to condense the space inside the jade pendant, but now, it only took him less than a day to enter the second step. The second step was to fuse the profound chi inner elixirs into the space inside the jade pendant. Although Lin Yi had 7 profound chi inner elixirs, 1 was given by Go Huli's lion, 2 were obtained in the Wulong Haut mountain range, 1 was given by the Qian mountain sect, 1 was given by the ghost, 1 was exchanged with a heaven stage cultivator in the cultivator's market, and the last one was picked up by the Sky Thunder Pig in the heavenly elixir sex trial. However, among them, the profound chi inner elixir given by the ghost was obviously very different from the other profound chi inner elixirs. Moreover, the ghost didn't let him use it, so it wasn't appropriate for Lin Yi to use it casually. As for the remaining 6, he could use them to make the profound chi necklace. However, Lin Yi only prepared 5 and kept the extra 1 first. Lin Yi was afraid that he would fail this time and lose 6 profound chi inner elixirs at once, so he kept 1 as a backup. If he succeeded, it wouldn't be too late to make another one in the future. This step was actually the most difficult one, because not only did he have to put the 5 profound chi inner elixirs into the space of the jade pendant, he had to fix them at a certain point in the space of the jade pendant, so that the 5 profound chi inner elixirs could form a cycle of 5 elements, and each of them could be fixed at its own supporting point in the space of the jade pendant, without any deviation at all. However, in fact, Lin Yi had a great advantage. Other blacksmiths didn't have the same connection with the jade pendant as Lin Yi did. That was to say, when a blacksmith put the profound chi inner elixir into the space of the jade pendant, it was completely based on his feeling and proficiency. Whether it could be successfully fixed to the supporting point or not depended entirely on luck. If it was unsuccessful, it would be a waste of a profound chi inner elixir. This profound chi inner elixir, which couldn't be fixed at the supporting point, couldn't be taken out of the space of the jade pendant, and could only be discarded. However, Lin Yi was different. To Lin Yi's surprise, not only could he see the scene in the space of the jade pendant, but for the first time, Lin Yi could actually take out the profound chi inner elixir from the space of the jade pendant after it was not fixed at the supporting point. This was also because the way to refine the small space was the same as the way to refine the space of the jade pendant. Of course, Lin Yi could also use his consciousness to control the space of the jade pendant. In this way, Lin Yi's work was much easier. If he couldn't place it properly, he could place it again. Although it was a little slow, he succeeded every time. Lin Yi simply put the remaining 6th profound chi inner elixir on the supporting point of the fire attribute. Every time he added a profound chi inner elixir of spirit beast, the probability of increasing defense and attack would be higher. When Lin Yi put the profound chi inner elixir on the supporting point of the fire attribute, It meant that when Lin Yi used the fire attribute martial arts, the probability of making the move more powerful would be higher, and the probability of defending against the fire attribute attack would also be higher. When the supporting points of the 5 elements were fixed, adding the profound Qi inner elixir on any of the supporting points would improve the ability of the corresponding attribute. This made Lin Yi very excited. Unexpectedly, all the 6 profound Qi inner elixirs were successfully integrated. 5 days were spent nervously in the refining process. Lin Yi was very nervous. He followed the instructions step by step and carried out the operation step by step. However, the heavens did not disappoint those who worked hard. Finally, on the evening of the 5th day, Lin Yi completed all the refining steps. Looking at the jade pendant in front of him, which had returned to its original appearance, Lin Yi also slowly put away the forging fire. The profound Qi necklace was finally refined successfully. Chapter 3285. Previously, it was written in the instructions that this Essence Qi necklace had a 30% chance of increasing the power of defense and attack. However, after adding an Essence Qi Niden, it could increase the chance of fire attribute by 50%. In the future, adding an Essence Qi Niden would increase the chance by 20%, and so on. A 50% chance didn't necessarily mean that he'd be able to increase his attack and defense, but it was still much stronger than before, and Lin Yi was very satisfied. Lin Yi didn't bother testing the necklace. He hung it around his neck and walked out of the room. In these 5 days, no one had bothered Lin Yi, but Lin Yi was worried about Yang Qiqi the most. He didn't know how she was doing. In theory, Yang Qiqi's trip to the association shouldn't be dangerous, but who knew if Luo would do anything after that incident with the red conch? Fortunately, when Lin Yi came out of the room, he saw Yang Qiqi, Little Nine, Su Shirhan, and Cheng Yi chatting about something. When they saw Lin Yi come out, they shut their mouths at the same time. Evidently, the topic was related to Lin Yi. But Lin Yi didn't have the mood to gossip. He let out a breath of relief when he saw that Yang Qiqi was safe. Xiao Qi, you've been to the association? How was it? Yeah, I came back 2 days ago. Qiqi, on the other hand, was quite relaxed. The people from the association were quite surprised that I'm an Earth-class early-phase practitioner, but considering the special nature of my family, they didn't think too much about it. But I could tell that the elders were quite happy about it. After all, I didn't need any training resources to get to Earth-class early phase. It wasn't easy at all. With talent like this, there's a chance for me to break through to Sky class. Lin Yi nodded. It seemed that there was a reason why Yang Qiqi was doing so well overseas. At least, from what Lin Yi saw, Yang Qiqi wasn't as useless as she was when he first met her. Perhaps Yang Qiqi's level of experience was different from his. As long as they didn't suspect you. No, they didn't. After all, I didn't hide my strength from them, so they were very happy. Qiqi shook her head. They understand me, and they even gave me a few Qi gathering pills as training resources. Oh, it seems that the Overseas Cultivators Association is quite generous. Lin Yi could not help but sigh. The Overseas Cultivators Association treated their members very well. If it wasn't for their overbearing style, they could have been friends. However, Hoodoo's patriarchal style was difficult to accept. The Overseas Cultivators Association isn't a sect with a deep foundation. Everyone who joins the association is like a customer of the sect. If there's no benefit, why will we gather people together? Qiqi said, everyone will only stay in the association if they get a taste of the sweetness. Lin Yi couldn't help but nod after hearing that. Indeed, the Overseas Cultivators Association was more like a group of experts recruited by clans rather than a large sect that had disciples to pass on. An organization like this that was developed in a short period of time still had its flaws. Did you see Luo this time? Lin Yi asked. No, I heard that he's in isolation. He won't be coming out for a while, but this kind of thing doesn't need the chairman to do it. The elders can make the decision. Qiqi said. Lin Yi was taken aback. He wanted to ask how Luo was doing. After all, Lin Yi left after setting up a trap, and he didn't know if Luodu would fall for it. He wanted to get some information about Luodu through Chi-Chi, but who would have thought that he'd be in isolation? What did that mean? Was the deal a success or a failure? What was he doing in isolation? But these were secrets that he couldn't tell Chi-Chi about. He could only let it go and continue helping Chi-Chi get to Earth-class late phase peak. In actuality, Luodu didn't go into isolation at all. He was heavily injured, and he was recovering in a secret room. After all, what good could come out of a fight between two Sky-class late phase peak masters? It was either one of them die or the other survive. The best outcome would be for both of them to be heavily injured, and this was the best-case scenario. After coming back, Luodu laid on his sickbed. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something wasn't right. He wasn't an idiot. It was fine if he was impulsive at the time, but after thinking about it, there were a lot of suspicious points. Luodu thought about it again and again. There was no doubt that he had brought a suitcase of money with him, not to mention that he had been carrying the suitcase. Even if the suitcase was around him, with his current strength, it would be impossible for him to take the money from the suitcase under his nose. As for swapping, that was even more impossible. Luodu also carefully looked at the suitcase after he came back, and there was no doubt that it was his. There was no possibility of swapping, but how could the money just disappear into thin air? What the hell? Plus, that Songsan orphanage was something Luodu had never heard of in his life. He really did think that Red Conch was trying to scam him with a fake account, but after thinking about it, he realized that Red Conch wasn't crazy. If they wanted to scam money, they could just scam someone else. Those drug dealers had money, so why would they scam him, the head of the association? Even an idiot would know that he wasn't someone to mess with, and this guy was using such a stupid method to scam him. It didn't seem possible. As far as Luodu was concerned, the money could be scammed any way they wanted. There was no need to get it from him. Besides, this wasn't a one-time deal, and they would have to work together again in the future. It wasn't like Red Conch hadn't seen money before. While Luodu realized that something was wrong, the general manager also realized that something was wrong. After all, he felt that there was no need for Luodu to put on such a show. He brought an empty box to trade and then entered his account to transfer the money. Wasn't this just looking for trouble? What was the point of coming to Red Conch's headquarters and doing this kind of low-level scam? Did he think that he could get the drugs? The result was a lose-lose situation, and no one got the upper hand. So the CEO felt that unless Luodu had nothing better to do, he wouldn't do such a meaningless thing. Chapter 3286. However, after asking for a long time, it didn't seem to be done by Fanny. So, he thought of another very important person, Secretary Liu. However, when he called Secretary Liu over to interrogate him, he got a shocking news. Secretary Liu, during the time of the transaction between the general manager and Luodu, actually fainted in the bathroom. Secretary Liu didn't think that it was a big deal. He thought that he was too tired from work and fell asleep in the bathroom. He didn't think that he was plotted against because he didn't feel anything at all. Therefore, he didn't report it to the general manager immediately after it happened. Although the general manager didn't particularly believe Secretary Liu's words, when he retrieved the company's surveillance video that day, he found a shocking secret. In the video, there were actually two Secretary Liu, and the other one entered the company later, and he hid in the bathroom as soon as he came in. Later, the real Secretary Liu entered the bathroom. Although he didn't know what happened, soon after, Secretary Liu walked out of the bathroom, went straight upstairs, and went to the general manager's office after that. It was what happened later. After Secretary Liu gave a laptop to Luodu, this Secretary Liu went downstairs again and entered the bathroom. Not long after, the Secretary Liu, who wore the company's uniform, walked out of the bathroom, then went downstairs and left the company. All of this showed that there were indeed two Secretary Liu, and the Secretary Liu who entered the office to help the general manager and president, he was probably the fake one. This discovery made the general manager a little speechless. It was really a great calculation, but he still failed miserably. The opponent completely took advantage of an unexpected loophole. He didn't expect that the opponent could turn into Secretary Liu, and it was exactly the same, so that he couldn't find any flaws. Of course, he didn't think of this at the time. If he thought of it and looked at Lin Yi carefully, he would definitely find some differences. After all, the appearance could be disguised, but there were still subtle differences in height and figure. This couldn't be made up for. The same was true for the voice. No matter how similar the disguise was, it was just a disguise. If one listened carefully, they would definitely find the difference. However, the general manager didn't think that Secretary Liu would be impersonated. Seeing this, the general manager knew that both Fanny and Secretary Liu were innocent. The two of them were also unwitting victims. The main culprit was that fake Secretary Liu who had appeared out of nowhere. Fanny, retrieve the company's surveillance footage from the past few days. Take a closer look and see if there are any suspicious characters. The general manager instructed Fanny, Secretary Liu, go take a look as well. See if you have any recollection of it. Yes, my boss, Fanny quickly replied. Secretary Liu also nodded in agreement. The two of them left the general manager's office and went to the surveillance room to check the video. However, in terms of suspicious characters, besides the Yiling, who came the day before, there were no other suspicious people. The others were basically old customers. They all had historical cooperation, so they were excluded. Only this Yiling's identity was extremely suspicious. He claimed to be the purchasing manager of the Buffon family's hotel group. In reality, there was no such person at all. Secretary Liu also had a very deep impression of him. Fanny, take a screenshot of Yiling and the person who impersonated me and compare them. Secretary Liu said. Okay, little Liu, are you suspecting this Yiling? Fanny quickly operated. Her computer skills were not bad. She easily took a screenshot of the two people's images. Yes, I suspect that this person is the person who impersonated me. He is the most suspicious. Secretary Liu nodded. Fanny took a screenshot of the two people's images. After comparing them, she realized that other than the difference in appearance, the two people were shockingly similar in terms of body and height. These two people were practically the same person. It's him. Secretary Liu slammed the table and stood up. He said with certainty, I'll report to the general manager now. Fanny quickly stood up and went to find the general manager. This was also a good opportunity to clear her name. Otherwise, although the general manager felt that it was someone else who did it, she and Secretary Liu would still be a little suspicious. Very soon, the general manager who received the news ran over. When he saw the comparison images on the computer screen, he frowned. He was now 100% sure that he had been tricked. However, what was Yiling's identity? Looking at Yiling's appearance, he should be Asian. President he of the Overseas Cultivators Association was also Asian. Then, could there be any connection between the two? It was no wonder that the general manager was suspicious. After all, this incident happened too coincidentally. This transaction with the Overseas Cultivators Association was only known by him, Fanny, Secretary Liu, Liu Te, and a few other core people. Then, there was only Liu Odan himself. This Yiling obviously knew the news in advance. On the first day, he came to survey the terrain. On the second day, when it was time for the transaction, he directly came to the general manager's office to do something. If this person wasn't Luodan's man, even the general manager himself felt that things couldn't be so coincidental. Give me the phone. I want to talk to Luodan. Although the general manager's injury hadn't healed, after taking the recover pill, he was more or less recovered. He could still move around in the wheelchair, but it was a little inconvenient for him to take the phone. Okay. Fanny quickly passed the phone to the general manager. At that moment, the general manager's only thought was to question Luodan and ask him if he was the one behind this scene. The phone was quickly connected. Luodan's angry voice came from the other side of the phone. What do you want? What do you want? I can tell you that I have investigated the matter clearly. I have the surveillance video as proof. Don't say that this person wasn't sent by you. There is no such coincidence in this world. The general manager scolded him. What are you talking about? Who was sent by me? What surveillance video? Are you crazy? Why? Do you think that I wanted to cheat you of your drugs? Is there something wrong with me? Did I cheat you of your drugs? He luoed in, coldly snorted. Chapter 3287. Let's see. Hiluadu's phone indicated that he had received an email, so he hung up the phone and opened the email. However, when Hiluadu saw it, his expression instantly became incomparably horrified. Lin Yi, why did this kid actually appear in the Red Conch headquarters? And on the day of the transaction, the secretary Lu that came was Lin Yi's impersonation? This video had been clearly recorded by Fanny, so Hiluadu didn't have to spend much effort at all. It was clear at a glance. However, Hiluadu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did the general manager treat Lin Yi as his own person? Hiluadu dialed the general manager's phone number again. Before he could speak, the general manager questioned him. How is it? Did you catch him red-handed? You didn't expect me to have such a strict recording here, and our analysis and reasoning are also very exquisite, right? Do you dare to say that this person isn't from your Overseas Cultivators Association? Wait a minute. Hiluadu interrupted the general manager's words impatiently and said coldly. First of all, I want to state one thing. I know this person, but he is definitely not from our Overseas Cultivators Association. You know him? Not from your Overseas Cultivators Association? The general manager snorted. Can't you say something more convincing? Don't interrupt me first. What I want to say is that this person is not only your enemy, but also mine. His name is Lin Yi, and he once killed an elder of our Overseas Cultivators Association. A few days ago, he was chased by our Overseas Cultivators Association. This isn't a secret. You can ask around, and you will know the details. Nuclear Luodu said. Really? The general manager was slightly stunned. The name Lin, he seemed a bit familiar. Where did I hear it before? Of course it's true, and I understand what you mean. Don't you think that I sent someone to scout ahead and then do some tricks to cheat you of your drugs? Hiluadu asked. Yes, why? The general manager was slightly stunned. Then why do I have to do this? I can just carry the empty box and change my account. Why do I need to send another person? Isn't it unnecessary? Moreover, this is simply not feasible. Hiluonan said, Do you think I need to do this? This? The general manager thought about it. What Hiluodan said was very reasonable. He had previously made a mistake, thinking that Ling was Hiluodan's man. But now that he thought about it carefully, Hiluodan did not need to do that. Moreover, whether Ling's name was Lin Yi or not, whether he was an enemy of the Overseas Cultivators Association, the general managers only needed to investigate and the truth would soon be revealed. All right, I'll go and investigate. If this matter is really a misunderstanding, then I'll give you the drugs in this transaction as an apology. The general manager was straightforward. After all, the trading site was his company. If there was a problem, it could only be his own problem. He could still afford to lose. Oh, thank you very much. I'll be waiting for your good news. Hiluodan didn't expect the general manager to be this easygoing. It surprised him a little, and his heavy heart felt a lot better now. Also, what made him feel relieved was that Lin Yi and Yang Qiqi really had nothing to do with each other. Lin Yi didn't even look for Yang Qiqi. Instead, he escaped to Rue Lei town, and somehow heard about the deal between Hiluodan and Red Conches, and went to cause trouble. Hiluodan didn't think that Lin Yi was after Red Conches. He thought that Lin Yi was after him. After all, he had just started a feud with Lin Yi, and no matter how he thought about it, Lin Yi was after him. How could it be so coincidental? Therefore, thinking of this, he would have felt a little apologetic. Although the box of money was lost in the Red Conch group, and the transfer was also a mistake, it wasn't the Red Conch group's fault. This way, he might have lost 2 portions of money and gotten 1 portion of drugs, but it was a very balanced situation. After all, Red Conches was dragged into this mess because of Lin Yi. After the general manager hung up, he told Fanny to investigate Lin Yi's case. This was quite easy to investigate. Fanny called Dafeng Bro, the person in charge of the domestic headquarters. Dafeng, it's Fanny, Fanny said after picking up. It's Assistant Fanny. Hello, what can I do for you? Doffing Bro was Lin Yi's man, but he was still very respectful towards Fanny on the surface. After all, Fanny was his direct superior. It's like this, there's a person called Lin Yi. Do you know him? Fanny got straight to the point. Lin Yi? I know him. I've reported this person to the headquarters before. He's the boss behind Miracle Dr. Guan's medical company, and Advisor Zhuge had a conflict with him before. He killed him. You told me not to mess with strong domestic practitioners like him. Doffing Bro didn't know what Fanny was talking about, and why she was asking about Lin Yi, but he didn't dare to say anything. Oh, Lin Yi, it's him? Fanny was startled. She didn't expect Lin Yi to be Red Conch's enemy. He was the one who killed Advisor Zhuge. Jiang Wen also said that Red Conches and the Firewolves had a deep grudge with Lin Yi. All right, I got it. Fanny didn't ask any more questions. It was enough that she knew who Lin Yi was. He was an unconventional practitioner in Huaxia, and she didn't need to ask to know that he had nothing to do with the association. He Luonan wasn't stupid enough to send a practitioner to cause trouble in Huaxia. If people found out about this, they'd definitely boycott him. He'd be digging his own grave. So, after Fanny heard about this, she immediately went to the general manager and told him about the situation. What? Fuck, it's that Lin Yi again? The general manager found the name familiar. Now, he finally remembered who Lin Yi was. So this kid was one of Red Conch's enemies. Lin Yi Ling, playing such a trick, this kid is really cunning. In that case, this kid is here to cause trouble for our Red Conch headquarters? Very likely. Fanny nodded and guessed. Chapter 3288. Yeah, what should we do now? Issue a wanted order to kill Lin Yi. Fanny thought about it and asked. That's definitely not possible. Even the Overseas Cultivators Association can't do anything about Lin Yi. Where can we find Lin Yi? Forget it. Let's not get involved in this matter. With Doffing's ability, going to trouble Lin Yi is equivalent to courting death. The general manager waved his hand and said, Then this matter, let's just let it go. Fanny was a little unwilling to be fooled. Let's forget it for the time being. The general manager shook his head and said, Our current business is only drug trafficking. Our strength is not as good as the Firewolf gang. Let's report this matter truthfully to the higher-ups and let the behind-the-scenes boss decide. Ah, you mean that Miss Lawn? Fanny was surprised, and her face changed slightly. The general manager nodded slowly. Some things were beyond the scope of his decision. Naturally, he wouldn't force himself. Fanny was very tactful. She knew that when the general manager called Miss Lawn, she'd better avoid it. This was the rule of the Red Conch. After Fanny left, the general manager dialed Miss Lan's phone. What's the matter? Miss Lawn quickly picked up the phone. It's like this. The general manager truthfully reported the matter of Lin Yi and he Lutu to Miss Lawn. Lin Yi? I understand. Miss Lawn frowned. It was Lin Yi again. This guy really knew how to cause trouble. However, Miss Lan's mind wasn't on Lin Yi. In fact, for her, the Firewolf gang and the Red Conch were just byproducts. Her ultimate goal was to find a person. This was the most important thing. Hearing that Miss Lawn didn't make any comments and replies on this matter, the general manager didn't dare to ask more. After hanging up the phone, he dialed Luta's phone again. President He, I'm sorry. I have already investigated. This matter was indeed done by that Lin Yi, so my previous promise is valid. I will send the drugs over. The general manager said. In fact, the general manager already felt that he owed a lot, but Luta didn't explain this matter, so he pretended not to know. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Both of them had their own ulterior motives. Both of them thought that Lin Yi was targeting them, so they didn't hesitate on this matter. They both thought that they had taken advantage of him. Of course, it was not that the two did not want to seek revenge on Lin Yi, but they did not have the opportunity for the time being. Miss Lawn, who was behind the scenes of the general manager, did not say anything, and Lutu was now seriously injured. If he wanted revenge, he could only choose the right time. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was waiting for Chi-Chi's chi-gathering pill after crafting the necklace. Chi-Chi didn't go to the association right away. She waited for half a month before appearing at the association again. This time, Yang Chi-Chi appeared as an Earth-class late-phase peak. Be it the elders of the association or Chairman He, both of them were shocked. They never realized that Yang Chi-Chi was a practitioner genius. Yang Chi-Chi, you're already an Earth-class late-phase peak? Hiluda looked at Chi-Chi, a little shocked. He was glad that he didn't make things difficult for Chi-Chi because of Lin Yi. Otherwise, Chi-Chi would have left the association already. Putting aside the question of whether or not Chi-Chi's background had the ability to get her to leave, Chi-Chi's family was huge overseas, different from Tang Yuchi's. If Chi-Chi wanted to leave, President, he wouldn't be able to treat her like Tang Yuchi. Plus, Hiluda had received some news from his brother, the Xianchen ancestor. Chi-Chi's sister, Little Nine, could very well be an Earth element inheritor called Tu Ranran. After all, the Xianchen ancestor was the one in charge of the inheritors and the Sky Class Island project. Even if the Yellow Earth sect was a sect in the West, they couldn't avoid the Xianchen ancestor if they wanted to participate in the Sky Class Island project. They could only tell him about the inheritors. And that was how the news reached Hiluda's ears. He had been in contact with the Xianchen ancestor for the past few days, and he mentioned Lin Yi as well. But the elder told him not to worry, that someone would take care of Lin Yi when he got back. Yes, Chairman He. Chi-Chi nodded politely. Elder Wang, go get a great recovery pill and give it to Chi-Chi. This is the tradition of the association. Chi-Chi, don't reject it. The chairman said to Elder Wang before turning to Chi-Chi. Thank you very much, President He. Chi-Chi said happily. Chi-Chi, I heard that your sister, Little Nine, is the inheritor of the Yellow Earth sect. Hiluda asked. Chi-Chi's heart skipped a beat. She didn't expect Hiluda to know about this, but she didn't want to hide it. After all, exposing Little Nine's identity would only benefit her. No matter how strong Hiluda was, he wouldn't dare go against the entire ancient world. The identity of Little Nine's inheritor was like a protective talisman. Whoever dared to touch Little Nine would be the entire ancient world's enemy. Which one of those Sky-class late-phase peak and full-circle peak didn't want to participate in the Sky-class Island project and ascend to Sky-class strength? Yes, she's the long-lost sister of the Yellow Earth sect's young master, Tu Baoan. Chi-Chi nodded. Haha, you and her are both cultivation geniuses. But Chi-Chi, how come I didn't see it before? How did you train so fast? Did you have some sort of miracle? Hiluda asked tentatively. Of course, he wasn't suspecting Chi-Chi. He just wanted to know if she had some sort of secret. President, the truth is that I didn't cultivate internal martial arts in the past because I couldn't calm my heart. You also know that internal martial arts cultivation is different from external martial arts cultivation. One is quiet and the other is active. In the past, because of Little Nine's matter, I went around looking for medicine, wanting to cure her illness, so I couldn't cultivate in peace. But now, her problem has been solved, so I can cultivate at home, Chi-Chi said, but because of the uniqueness of the assassin group, we're not allowed to reveal our strength to the outside world. It's just that I was stuck at a bottleneck before, and I trusted the association. That's why I told them. And this pill, if it wasn't from the Sky Elixir sect, then it was from a previous stock. It definitely wasn't as good as Zhang Liju's, but it was good enough that he had one. He wasn't picky anyway. The quality of the chi-gathering pill only mattered when used to break the barrier. A good quality pill would increase the success rate, but an experienced pill wouldn't make any difference in the end. Lin, he had the experience of taking a chi-gathering pill before, so he wasn't too nervous. After preparing the pill, he took a deep breath and slowly put it in his mouth, swallowing it. Immediately after, a warm current flowed from Lin Yi's abdomen to his whole body, and it was as if his meridians were on fire. This feeling was something Lin Yi had experienced before. It was painful, but Lin Yi knew that this was a path he had to go through, and so he didn't try to resist it. He just let it happen, gritting his teeth and waiting for it to happen. After that, The burning sensation intensified, and Lin Yi felt that not only his meridians, but his whole body was on fire. But even so, Lin Yi gritted his teeth and persevered. This feeling was very familiar to Lin Yi. It was the same feeling he had the last time he took a chi-gathering pill. The more painful it was, the more it was a sign of a breakthrough. The energy released by the chi-gathering pill flowed continuously from Lin Yi's abdomen into Lin Yi's meridians. And as time passed, Lin Yi could feel the energy in his meridians increasing. The huge amount of energy was rushing at Lin Yi's meridians, as if it wanted to expand and expand them. On Lin Yi's forehead, beads of sweat rolled down continuously. This painful feeling was getting stronger and stronger, but in Lin Yi's heart, he was very excited. After all, if he didn't feel this way, Lin Yi would be crying. It wasn't easy to get a chi-gathering pill, but it didn't have any effect. If that happened, Lin Yi would have the heart to die. As Lin Yi's pain deepened, the spiritual energy in the air gathered and circled above Lin Yi's head, forming an extremely weak vortex. It formed a resonance with the true energy in Lin Yi's body, and it circulated rapidly around Lin Yi's body. The faster it spun, the faster Lin Yi's body temperature rose. Finally, there was a loud bang in Lin Yi's ears, and his whole body trembled. His meridians seemed to explode in an instant, and at this moment, Lin Yi knew that he had broken through Heaven Middle Stage. At this moment, Lin Yi had the strength of Heaven Middle Stage. It could be said that Lin Yi was one step closer to that peak. Heaven Rank Middle Stage was only 4 stages away from the peak of Heaven Rank Late Stage. Thinking about the journey from Golden Stage to now, Lin Yi was filled with emotion. It was only a short year, but it felt like a lifetime. In this year, too many things had happened, and he had too many responsibilities on his shoulders. These responsibilities constantly urged Lin Yi to work hard. Fortunately, this chi-gathering pill allowed Lin Yi to smoothly level up and break through, and the current Lin Yi, with the Essence Necklace, could probably kill an expert with the strength of the peak of Heaven Late Stage, right? Chapter 3290. All this time, Lin Yi had been racing against time, and he'd managed to confuse a lot of people. Of course, Lin Yi had successfully broken through to Sky Class mid-phase, and it was time to go back. Hiding outside wasn't the way to go, and without any elixirs, Lin Yi wouldn't be able to break through again. On this day, Lin Yi said goodbye to Chi-Chi and Jio, bringing Shirhan and Cheng-Yi back. But in the time Lin Yi was gone, something big happened in the ancient level, and it was all about the Palace of Darkness. But because of how big the incident with Lin Yi was, not many people paid attention to the Palace of Darkness. Qibing had been living a hard life these days. Not only did he have to clean the toilets with one arm, but Mingyao made it worse, pushing all kinds of dirty work onto his shoulders. Now, Qibing had become the executioner of the Palace of Darkness, feeding the cows and goats. When the disciples were on duty, Qibing could be seen everywhere. He didn't want to do it, but he had no choice. The Palace of Darkness had become Mingyao's word now, and as long as her actions didn't harm the Palace of Darkness, the Grand Elder wouldn't object. Qibing's backer, Elder Black, had lost his power as well, and he couldn't even protect himself. How could he care about Qibing? Qibing felt so wronged. Just thinking about it made him angry, but there was nothing he could do. In his heart, he was planning to go to the Sky Elixir sect, but he couldn't just go as he pleased. Although Kong Ming had agreed, he had to show some sincerity if he wanted to, right? If he just went, he wouldn't have any position in the Sky Elixir sect. He might just end up as a disciple, and it wouldn't be much better than being in the Palace of Darkness. He wanted to stand out and get revenge on that bitch, Lin Yi and Mingyao. So he needed strength. A man couldn't be without strength, but without status, where would strength come from? Qibing basically had no chance of leveling up in the Palace of Darkness anymore, unless Mingyao died or something happened to him. Just when Zhao Qibing was racking his brains, unable to find a reason to surrender and offer benefits, a phone call made him ecstatic. Hello, is that Zhao Qibing? I'm Kong Mingming. Kong Mingming's arrogant voice came from the other side of the phone. Back then, Kong Mingming was just a playboy from an ordinary family that was not even an aristocratic family. However, he became an elder of the Heavenly Elixir sect, one of the largest sects in the ancient times. Of course, he did not know that Kong Mingming was the son-in-law of Xianqian ancestor. If he knew, he would be even more envious. It's me, Elder Kong. Are you looking for me? Qibing said respectfully. It's like this. Let me ask you something. Is Chu Mingyao really powerful in the Palace of Darkness now? The Xianqian ancestor knew a little about the Palace of Darkness. During this period of time, the Xianqian ancestor was a little anxious. This Lin he hid abroad and wouldn't come back. Those who went to cause trouble for the Yellow Springs sect also stopped. The Xianqian ancestor didn't know where to start if he wanted to deal with Lin Yi. But it was impossible to let Lin Yi go just like that. Putting aside the fact that Lin Yi made Little 11 into this state, just the conflict from before was enough for him to not let him go so easily. So, the Xianqian ancestor wanted to force Lin Yi back and see how the sects that were going to cause trouble for Lin Yi would react. If they didn't cause trouble for Lin Yi, then it meant that there was something wrong with what happened before. If they did cause trouble for Lin Yi, then the Xianqian ancestor could just sit back and watch the fire burn. However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't find a suitable reason. However, Kong Mingming's words enlightened the Xianqian ancestor. Kong Mingming was up to no good. He suddenly thought of a good idea, and that was to get Chu Mingyao. As Kong Mingming's status rose, the Xianqian ancestor also told some secrets to Kong Mingming, such as the Heaven-class island plan. At this moment, Kong Mingming also knew that the young master of the Heaven Elixir sect wanted to take in wives and concubines. He wanted to take Bingtang as his wife. It was nothing more than setting this status in advance to prevent the future Heaven-class island plan from affecting the plan by losing his virginity. The wife and concubine of the Heaven Elixir sect's young master was equivalent to the young master's woman. She could temporarily keep her virginity. So, Kong Mingming suggested to let the young master of the Heaven Elixir sect go to the Dark Night Palace to propose. After all, the Xianqian ancestor had to do these things in the next few years. When Chu Mingyao was in trouble, how could Lin Yi just sit and watch? This way, Lin Yi would definitely return to his country, and his enemies would come to his door. Even if his enemies didn't do anything, the Xianqian ancestor could hint to some others to kill Lin Yi in the Dark Night Palace. Of course, the premise of all this was built on the premise that Lin Yi had to show up. That was why there was the scene of Kong Mingming calling Zhao Qibing. It's like this for now. Zhao Qibing nodded and said, Now, in the Dark Night Palace, Chu Mingyao's words have enormous weight. Even a Grand Elder doesn't object to it. I see. Kong Mingming frowned. What if the Heaven Elixir sect went to propose and the Grand Elder stopped them? One had to know that the Grand Elder's temper was bad and stubborn. If she stood on Chu Mingyao's side, then things would be a little difficult, just like Ice Palace's Bingtang. The Ice Palace had the power to be strong, and if Bingtang didn't agree, the Xianqian ancestor couldn't do anything. Chapter 3291. And Kong Mingming was his son-in-law. Even if Boss Bai was angry, he wouldn't really do anything to Kong Mingming. It would just leave a knot in Boss Bai's heart. What's wrong? What's wrong? Qibing felt that Kong Mingming's tone was a little irritated, so he asked curiously. Nothing. But, Qibing, I have a mission for you. If you do it well, I can recommend you to come to our Sky Elixir sect. I can't promise you the position of an elder, but you could be a deacon. Kong Mingming said. Really? That's great. Qibing was overjoyed. Elder Kong, tell me, what do you need me to do? Don't worry, I'll do my best to complete the mission. It's nothing much. In a few days, something might happen in your Palace of Darkness. You just need to report the reaction of Grand Elder and Mingyao to me. You don't need to do or ask about anything else, Kong Mingming said. Is that so? All right, I understand. Qibing quickly nodded in response. Chapter 3292. The disciple was startled. He was about to question Kong Xiaoming when he saw the Heavenly Elixir Sect's Elder's token. He jumped in fright and quickly changed his words. "Please wait for a moment. I'll go and report." What are you waiting for? Kong Xiaoming represented the Heavenly Elixir Sect, a first-rate sect in the ancient times. Because of his high status, he didn't care about the disciple of the Dark Palace. Of course, the disciple didn't dare say anything. Who told them to be weaker than the Sky Palace? This was the situation that had been in place for thousands of years. The Dark Palace never had any strong characters, and even if they had a Sky-class late-phase peak, it was just one. They couldn't compare to the Sky Elixir Sect. The disciple quickly returned and reported to Chu Mengyao and the Grand Elder. If it was in the past, these disciples definitely wouldn't report to the Palace Master. Yuan Er's Palace Master was just a title. Everyone knew that her words weren't as effective as a normal elder's. But now, it was different. Mengyao was the rightful Palace Master of the Dark Palace, and her position wasn't lower than the Grand Elder's. Naturally, they would report to her. Kong Mingming is here? Mengyao was in the middle of practicing when she heard the disciple's report. She frowned. This Kong Mingming was an old acquaintance, but after he became strong, Mengyao didn't have much contact with him anymore. Why would he suddenly visit the Dark Palace? Could it be because of Lin Yi? These days, Mengyao knew about the rumors about Lin Yi as well. As the Palace Master of the Dark Palace, it was much easier for her to know about these things than Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao. Her personality was fundamentally different from Tang Yun and Xiao Xiao. She was a young miss, and although she didn't manage a company, she had seen and heard about it since she was young. She had the temperament of a leader, and that was how she established her position in the Dark Palace. As for Tang Yun, on the one hand, it was because of her personality. On the other hand, it was because she had stayed here to exchange for Lin Yi's life. It was reasonable for the Shuigu to restrict her and prevent her from interacting with Lin Yi. As for the Ice Palace, Xiao Xiao was a strong person as well, similar to Yushu, but there was an even stronger palace master, Bing Tang. Bing Tang had always looked down on Lin Yi and wanted to see how Lin Yi was going to deal with him if he got into trouble. In fact, Bing Tang was conflicted because of that little mistress. As Lin Yi got stronger, she didn't know how she should face Lin Yi. Did she really have to be this little mistress for him, going from Xiao Xiao's senior sister to her sister? And so, Bing Tang locked down all information related to Lin Yi. Her control over the Ice Palace was no less than Meng Yao's, so naturally, Xiao Xiao wouldn't know about this. But even if Meng Yao was a bit worried after hearing the rumors, she still trusted Lin Yi. This trust was probably formed from living with Lin Yi for a long time. As far as Meng Yao was concerned, no matter how difficult it was, no matter how dangerous it was, Lin Yi would be able to deal with it. And no matter what trouble Meng Yao ran into, no matter how strong the enemy was, Lin Yi would always be there to protect her. Lin Yi was her protector. Because of her unconditional trust in Lin Yi, Meng Yao didn't think that Lin Yi was hiding out of the country. If he wanted to hide, wouldn't it be better to hide in West Star Mountain? With air good in there, whoever came would die. Why would he need to leave the country? And so, Lin Yi must have other things he wanted to do. The Mist still believed that Lin Yi was the strongest. Just as she was thinking about why Kong Mingming was here, the Grand Elder walked in. Evidently, she'd received a report from a disciple and was here to discuss a plan with Meng Yao. "Yao Yao, are you training?" The Grand Elder asked in a pleasant tone. "No, Grand Elder, I just received a report from a disciple guarding the door. He said that Kong Mingming from the Sky Elixir Sect is here." Meng Yao said, "Yeah, that's why I'm here." "Yao Yao, what do you think Kong Mingming is here for?" The Grand Elder asked. "I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with him, but he knows Lin." Meng Yao said honestly. The Grand Elder couldn't help but frown when she heard Lin Yi's name. To be honest, the Grand Elder didn't think highly of Lin Yi, especially with the recent news from the ancient level. It made the Grand Elder think that Lin Yi was someone who only knew how to show off, but didn't have any real strength. So now that she heard that this might have something to do with Lin Yi, she said unhappily, "Don't tell me that Lin Yi's real strength was exposed, and he's here to cause you trouble? After all, you were really close with Lin Yi. Yao Yao, why don't you tell him later that you've cut off all contact with Lin Yi? What do you think? I've always said that Lin Yi kid isn't reliable. He's just a solo practitioner. How can he be that strong? Now that he's exposed, his enemies are probably coming for revenge. However, the Grand Elder suddenly noticed that Meng Yao's face was very dark, and she couldn't help but stop talking. She wasn't afraid of Lin Yi, but she was afraid that Meng Yao would be unhappy. Grand Elder, Lin Yi isn't as strong as the rumors say. I hope you won't slander him in the future. Meng Yao said seriously. Forget it. I'm doing this for your own good. Yao Yao, if Lin Yi is really that strong, why isn't he back yet? Why is he hiding abroad? The Grand Elder wasn't convinced. She didn't know what Lin Yi did to Meng Yao, but she was still on Lin Yi's side at a time like this. Lin Yi has his own business. He doesn't need to tell anyone where he's going, does he? What others say is their business. Meng Yao explained. All right, let's go meet Kong Mingming first. Let's see what he's here for. The Grand Elder didn't want her relationship with Meng Yao to be affected by a solo practitioner like Lin Yi, so she didn't mention Lin Yi again. But to be honest, she didn't think much of Lin Yi. Chapter 3293. Meng Yao already knew the Grand Elder's temper, and so she kept the balance between the two of them, not touching his bottom line. The Grand Elder, on the other hand, wanted to use Meng Yao to revitalize the Palace of Darkness, so naturally he wouldn't touch her bottom line. The two of them came to the Palace of Darkness guest room, where Kong Mingming and Xiao Yi were invited in as well. Kong Mingming was leisurely drinking tea, not even standing up to welcome the Grand Elder and Meng Yao. Meng Yao didn't think much of Kong Mingming, but when she saw Xiao Yi beside Kong Mingming, her face changed. Others might not recognize Xiao Yi, but she did. He was the one who'd hurt Lin Yi. Xin Yan still had a picture of him in her phone, and she'd even told Meng Yao to be careful of this person. But why was Kong Xiaoming hanging out with this person? What was his relationship with Kong Mingming? Kong Mingming from the Sky Elixir sect was hard enough to deal with, but he'd brought someone this strong with him. It gave Meng Yao a headache. Xiao Yi and Lin Yi had a deep grudge. From the first time they fought over Han Jingjing, to the second time because of Sun Jingyi, when Lin Yi stole Xiao Yi's sky-class weapon. The two were as incompatible as fire and water. Elder Kong, you two sure are arrogant, aren't you? You came to the Palace of Darkness and didn't even stand up to welcome me in Palace Master Chu? The Palace of Darkness doesn't welcome rude guests like you. Kong Mingming and Xiao Yi's actions infuriated the Grand Elder. This was a slap to the face of the Palace of Darkness. The Grand Elder cared about the palace's reputation the most, and these two's actions had crossed his bottom line. You can insult the Grand Elder himself. You can insult the disciples of the Palace of Darkness, but you can't insult the rules of the Palace of Darkness. Is that so? Why don't I feel that way? Please have a seat. Kong Mingming did not seem to understand the meaning of the Grand Elder. He still pointed to the seat not far away and said casually, You. The Great Elder snorted coldly, revealing his peak heaven rank late phase strength. From the Grand Elder's perspective, Kong Mingming was just an early-stage heaven alchemist. He didn't have much power. He wanted to scare him and let him know that this was the Dark Knight Palace, not the Heavenly Elixir sect. Oomph. Little One snorted coldly, and suddenly revealed his peak heaven late-stage great circle strength, shocking the Supreme Elder. He looked at Kong Mingming's follower in disbelief. You. The Great Elder was a little shocked. She never thought that Kong Mingming's follower would be so powerful. It should be known that in the entire ancient times, the number of experts who had the strength of the great perfection of a late stage of heaven rank could be counted on one's fingers. Who was this person? Little One looked at the Grand Elder's shocked face and smiled proudly. This was the effect he wanted. We have the right to be proud of coming here. Kong Xiaoming was feeling great as well. Having a bodyguard like this was the best thing he could do. He looked at the Grand Elder's face and was delighted. Grand Elder, who are you trying to scare? Little one, right? Aren't you going to show off your heaven-class weapon as well? Meng Yao wasn't afraid at all. She only looked at Little One coldly. The reason why she dared to talk to Little One like this was because of her special identity. She was a metal element inheritor. If Little One dared to hurt her, then he would be going against the entire ancient sect. Plus, Meng Yao knew more inside information. She knew from Lin Yi that the inheritor plan and the heaven-class island plan were led by the Xiantian ancestor. Since that was the case, as the disciple of the Xiantian ancestor, Little One wouldn't hurt Meng Yao. He wouldn't be able to explain himself when he went back. That was why Meng Yao was so arrogant and dared to mock him. As expected, Little One's face froze and his old face turned red. His heaven-class weapon had been taken away by Lin Yi, and he still hadn't returned it. This was a pain in his heart. Being directly pointed out by Meng Yao made him feel embarrassed. Okay, Junior Brother Kong, let's get down to business. 5 Elements Sect, Xiantian Ancestor's first disciple. Meng Yao said to the shocked Grand Elder, directly pointing out Little One's identity. After hearing this, the Grand Elder's face changed slightly, and he couldn't help but frown. 5 Elements Sect? What are you doing here? Nothing. I'm just here to accompany Junior Brother Kong. Little One pointed at Kong Ming Ming and said, Kong Ming Ming, aren't you an elder of the Heavenly Elixir Sect? When did you become the disciple of the Xiantian ancestor? Meng Yao asked. I'm not only the disciple of the Xiantian ancestor, I'm also his son-in-law. Kong Ming Ming laughed and said, Okay, let's not talk about this. Palace Master Meng Yao, this time I'm here on behalf of our Heavenly Elixir Sect's young master, Silkworm Change, to propose marriage to you. Propose marriage? What marriage? Meng Yao was slightly taken aback. Our young master Tian has taken a fancy to Miss Chu and is preparing to take Miss Chu as a concubine. How about it? Miss Chu, if you have no objections, let's settle this matter. From now on, you'll be young Master Tian's woman. Kong Ming Ming said to himself, as if this matter had already been decided by the Heavenly Elixir Sect. Kong Ming Ming, what do you mean by this? Is there something wrong with you? Meng Yao's face darkened, and her eyes turned cold. This Kong Ming Ming really didn't have any good intentions. He came here to cause trouble. Marry Silkworm Change? Didn't he know that she liked Lin Yi? But he probably knew, and he came here only because he saw that Lin Yi's strength wasn't good enough. So he came to cause trouble. Elder Kong, please leave. Your Heavenly Elixir Sect is a big family, and our Palace of Darkness can't afford it. The Grand Elder also had a lot of opinions about the Heavenly Elixir Sect. Although it could be said that Yuan broke off the engagement first, these years after the engagement, the Heavenly Elixir Sect had been secretly suppressing the Palace of Darkness. This made the Grand Elder hate the Heavenly Elixir Sect a long time ago. How could he let Meng Yao marry them? A small character like him isn't good enough for you. Not only that, if you let him come, he might bring trouble to the Dark Palace. He was Kong Ming Ming's enemy in the first place, and now that he's here, we're obviously going against Kong Ming Ming. Isn't that the same as offending the Sky Elixir Sect? The Grand Elder didn't want a marriage alliance with the Sky Elixir Sect, but she didn't want to fall out with them. Of course, she looked down on Lin even more. She didn't think that there was anything good about Lin Yi. She didn't want Meng Yao to repeat Yuan's mistake and have something with Lin Yi. Chapter 3295. Forget it. It's up to you. Highest Elder sighed. She felt that there was something wrong with what happened today. The Heavenly Elixir Sect came early without any warning, and after being rejected by her, they left directly. This was really strange. But, although Meng Yao had established her own prestige in the Palace of Darkness, she was still lacking when it came to the foresight of the ancient level. So, the Grand Elder decided to think about what the Sky Elixir School was trying to do. However, The Grand Elder was destined to be disappointed. She would never have thought that the Sky Elixir sect didn't go through such a big circle for the Dark Palace, but for Lin Yi. But this conclusion was something the Grand Elder would never have thought of. After Kong Ming Ming and Xiao Yi left the Dark Palace, they went straight back to the Five Elements sect. The rejection from the Dark Palace was actually within their expectations. Kong Ming Ming called the Xiantian ancestor in the car. "Father-in-law, we left the Dark Palace." As expected, the Grand Elder didn't know how to appreciate favors and rejected my proposal. Kong Ming Ming said, "But I carried out the second plan and told her that the ancient level hasn't been peaceful recently." "All right, I got it. Leave the rest to me." The Xiantian ancestor sighed and nodded. He hung up and said to the door, "Xiao, come in for a moment." This Xiao was naturally the second disciple of the Xiantian ancestor, Xiao Yi's Jr. He was a Sky-class late-phase peak full circle master. Although he hadn't reached full circle for as long as Xiao Yi, he was still one of the top masters in the Five Elements sect. In the Five Elements sect, there were a total of 5 experts at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage. Apart from the Black Sky ancestor, Boss Bai, who had become a cripple, there were still the Black True ancestor, Little One, and Little Two. "Master." Xiao cupped his fist respectfully and walked in. "How about this? Tell Xiao San, Xiao Si, and Xiao Wu to come find me later. I have something for them to do." The Xiantian ancestor said to Xiao. "Okay, Master, I'll go find them now." Xiao quickly nodded. That group of robbers in the ancient level didn't even exist. It was no wonder that the Grand Elder hadn't heard of it. The Xiantian ancestor hadn't formed it yet. Since the Dark Palace rejected the marriage, the Xiantian ancestor had to move on to the next step of his plan, which was to find trouble with the Dark Palace. Either the Grand Elder would force Meng Yao to marry into the Sky Elixir sect, or Meng Yao would ask Lin Yi for help, or Meng Yao would ask Lin Yi for help. Either way, Lin Yi couldn't hide anymore. He had to show himself no matter what. There wouldn't be any accidents. Therefore, Elder Xiantian sent his disciple to form a team to cause trouble for the Dark Palace. This time, he sent out 3 Heaven-class peak late-phase masters in one go. His goal was to make the Dark Palace admit defeat and give them pressure. As for why they didn't send Little Fool, it was because it would be too fake if Little Fool made a move. How many peak late-stage heaven-rank powerhouses were there in the ancient era? There were only a handful of them. If he sent Xiao Air to the Five Elements sect, although Xiao Air had never shown up in public in the ancient times, and the Grand Elder definitely wouldn't suspect the Five Elements sect, Boss Bai definitely would. Apart from those known peak late-stage perfect masters, this perfect master could only come from the Five Elements sect. This was not the result that the Xiantian ancestor wanted. After all, in the Xiantian ancestor's plan, if no other forces came to cause trouble for Lin Yi after Lin Yi appeared, then he would let his disciples' team directly kill Lin Yi. Anyway, it would have nothing to do with him at that time. Even if Boss Bai suspected it, he wouldn't be able to find any evidence. There were very few peak late-phase Heaven Stage experts, but there were a few peak late-phase Heaven Stage experts. Almost every ancient sect had them, and even rogue cultivators had them. Who would know who did it when the time came? Soon, Little 3, Little 4, and Little 5 came in front of the Xiantian ancestor. The 3 bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Master." "And very good. You're here? I have something for you to do." "How about it?" "You must do it well. Do you hear me?" The Xiantian ancestor's stern voice made the 3 serious. "Don't worry, Master. We'll work hard." The 3 quickly said, "Okay, this is how it is. Bring a few juniors. They don't need to be too powerful. Just heaven rank will do. Then put on a show for me." As the Xiantian ancestor spoke, he told his 3 disciples about his plan. Actually, the 3 peak late-stage heaven rank masters were just to intimidate the Dark Palace and give them some pressure. It was just to draw out Lin Yi. They didn't really expect to destroy the Dark Palace. So, it didn't matter if there weren't peak late-stage perfect masters. These people were enough to intimidate. After all, the Great Elder was a peak late-stage heaven rank master. He couldn't possibly go against 3 peak late-stage heaven rank masters. "We understand, Master." We will definitely do this well." After listening, Little Three and the others felt that this matter wasn't too difficult. Wasn't it just intimidating? When the time came, they would just have to kill a few disciples or work together to injure the Great Elder. It wasn't too difficult. It might not be easy for the three of them to work together to kill the Supreme Elder. After all, the Supreme Elder had put up a life-and-death struggle before his death. It was possible that the three of them would suffer heavy losses. However, injuring and threatening the Supreme Elder was still possible. Yes, but there's one thing you must pay attention to.